call this meeting to order. It's 6:30. So item number 2 is the high school technology integration plan presentation. Who's up? Oh, Karen. Thank you.
Hello. Is this on? So tonight we want to present the high school technology integration plan. We also want to kind of update you on technology in the district and where we are and where we're going. So can you advance, Carrie?
Oops, sorry.
Thanks. So over the past 4 years now, we've been purchasing many Chromebooks, as you know, through both grants and through the state, through our 1%, and through our regular operating budget. And these have been used to, in classrooms, they're in carts at the high schools. They're also in the library. Students can check them out to use for the day, and that has been very popular, and students are able to use them all day in their classrooms. They also have them in the counseling services, and we also have them all the way down to grade 3. So right now we have 16 carts at Sheehan and 18 carts at Lyman Hall, a total in the district of over 3,000. So.
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yep.
Why are there almost double at Sheehan over Lyman Hall for checkout?
So number-wise, there's 485 at Sheehan and 661 at Lyman Hall. So, oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about the library?
Yeah,
At the checkout?
it says you have 62 at Sheehan for checkout and 30 at Lyman Hall for checkout. I was wondering why there is such a large disparity.
So part of it is the need. We haven't seen a need to have more than that, so we distributed one additional cart out to a department.
Okay.
So they have access to it, it's just not through the library.
Okay.
If the need arose, we could pull a cart from any of the departments where we have it and move it to the library.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
That's it.
So, can I ask, how many Chromebooks are on a cart?
So it varies. The carts could have anywhere from 15 to 30. Most of them have 25 to 30, however.
Okay, so, well, I'm sorry, I got distracted.
So sure, it
By the
varies.
stupid man coming sitting next to me. Yeah, whatever. I hate to say that. Anyway, go ahead, I'm sorry.
So the carts vary depending upon where they are, from 15 to 30, but most of them have 25 to 30 in them.
25 to 30.
Correct.
Thanks.
Yeah, Karen, you mentioned there's 3,000 portable
Yes.
devices throughout the school system.
Correct.
How many of them are for use by students versus faculty and staff?
I would say almost all are used by students.
Almost 3,000 used by students.
Yes. There are very few that are used by staff, yes.
And what portion of the students would you say have their own?
We're going to
portable
get to
devices?
that.
Okay.
So if you could hold that. Okay. Okay.
All right, so Karen explained where we are in terms of hardware currently. So one of the things that we looked at is where are we in terms of faculty use of the Chromebooks in their classrooms. So last year, we developed a survey which was administered twice during the last school year and again at the beginning of this school year to get a pulse on what is happening in the classroom. So you can see the current way that computers or Chromebooks in particular are being used in the classroom to research topics, for students to share their work with teachers via the Google Docs platform, and to access specific websites during class time. But what is more significant is how we started to change our practice and use Google Classroom as a way of communicating with our students. So you can see from October 2016 to the present time, the jump that has been made in terms of teachers changing their practice. Now, a lot of this has occurred because of two things. Based on the survey, we were able to identify what the professional development needs of our teachers were. So we were able to personalize that PD to suit their needs in terms of technology. So that's where you saw the growth from October to May 2017. Also, as more teachers are using Google Classroom as a platform, they're discussing this with their colleagues, they're seeing the benefits, they're sharing techniques to make it a useful resource to support student learning. So that has helped as well. So now we're faced, I don't know who has the clicker here to move on. Oh. So now we're faced, yes.
So can you tell us, what are the basic features of Google Classroom?
Google Classroom is a great organizing tool where teachers can basically set up their classrooms in it. So if I have a period 1 class, a period 4 class, and so on, they can put their notes, they can put videos, they can put links to websites, they can post homework, instructions, they can receive information on work assignments. There can be that two-way communication. Some teachers will differentiate instruction via Google Classroom, where students will receive leveled readings on a particular topic, so it meets their needs without being embarrassed in front of their peers in terms of, wait a second, you have the pink copy and everyone else has the white copy. They're also able to give feedback in real time in terms of students' writing. They can share their work, they can co-author. So it does open up a different world.
Do we have any standards or expectations or requirements for teachers' uses of it?
There is currently no district standard or requirement. Once the district has moved towards a Google environment, it was just a natural transition for the teachers to make use of Google Apps for Education, and Classroom is one of those.
So if I saw the numbers right, 85% use in one of the schools and 91% in the other, wouldn't we want to now move to that, to standard adoption?
So part of those figures, the main issue was access and teacher comfortability. So students did not have, at Lyman Hall anyway, I can speak, students did not have great access. Karen has done a tremendous job since I started in getting Lyman Hall some additional Chromebooks. So now that teachers know students, and they will have regular access, many more teachers have started utilizing Google Classroom. That was one of the boosts for us. So our World Language department had no Chromebook access until last year, and we've got them a few cards now. So all of them are now on Google Classroom. So it's things like that and access that have really increased teachers' motivation to really move on to the platform. And it's really easy, and it gives them a method to communicate. Some of our teachers last year used it on snow days. They held online debates with their classes so they could continue some of that education. That's not being utilized, all over the place yet, but some of our teachers did utilize it to communicate during some days off with students.
And I just want to add to that, it's a newer product, so it really didn't exist 5 years ago. So every year they come out with more and more updates, and when it was first released, there were some key features missing, and some districts went out and bought a separate learning management system. Those pieces have been added to Google Classroom, and so where it is today is not where it was a year or 2 years ago. So it's growing as we're growing.
And based on the presentation this evening and the timeline of activities that are planned, the actual protocols would be part of that. So we need to put in place those protocols. Actually, it was about 3 years ago now when we were transitioning between IT directors, and Rob Covey was assisting in that area as an interim person. That's when we first started getting a cohort, actually it's probably 4 years ago now, a cohort of teachers trained as Google experts, or they were badged, meaning that they had a special level of Google training. And then from there, as we learned and we talked to other districts, it really was meant to grow organically, because it's not something that you could push at people, because there was a constant evolution of it. So that's really where I think we've probably done it the right way. There have been other districts that have just mandated that everybody had to go Google Classroom at a certain date, and there was not as much relevance to the use of it. We did switch over, obviously, to all of our email. That was a mandatory switch. We started training people on using sharing documents, the shared calendars. I know that Carrie Latour gives me a lesson every day, just even before this meeting, on how to use Google a little bit better. So I think the protocols, the key was that we wanted to make sure that we had the access, as Joe alluded to, which we've continued to do over the years. We wanted to make sure that we had the board up to date as to where the plans are going, and then setting the protocols. It ties into some of the instructional strategies that I think we shared with the board last year, and that we have vetted through teachers in terms of key areas, and how technology is one of those key areas.
But at some point, you want standard adoption, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So,
And the student, right, because we want consistency for the students. And
Correct.
This is the way the students learn
Correct.
most effectively, or they're most comfortable, and they're gonna.
well,
We're
it's
gonna invest.
interesting. We've heard both sides of the story on that one. There are many students, high performing students, as well as students who may have more opportunities for growth, that technology is not the way that they want it, preferred way of learning. So we do need to have the balance
What if
there. So.
communicating?
Well, it's both a little bit. The communication piece, I think we're seeing more as a value-added piece, to speak to your point. There was a service that we're no longer allowed to use because of the FERPA laws that the state has enacted. So Google Classroom provides us a safe place for that communication. So you're absolutely right. That's a
I think,
key
for
piece.
instance, notes. When would a student ever see a teacher's note? So if they missed something in a class.
Correct.
You're not gonna get it, right? Now, if the teacher's posting their notes,
Correct.
the students can go back, look at it when they're doing their homework or preparing for a test or whatever.
And it's a much less expensive way of doing it, like a Blackboard system or other systems that other districts have utilized over years. And even colleges. A lot of colleges use online learning platforms that are really not necessary, because Google's a free
Right, well, now
software.
it's integrated. It's
Yeah,
now that
but-
it's developed.
Yeah, so we are preparing. The good news is, and I agree, the consistent protocols are key. We're preparing them for that environment that they move towards in college.
Thanks.
Kathy?
A couple questions, and if they're will be answered later in this presentation, then just let me know that. PCs versus the Chromebooks. I'm umming a lot, I'm sorry. PCs versus the Chromebooks. Like, the Chromebooks have a lot of the same functionality as a PC.
Yeah, I was going to talk about that in a
You
little
wanna
bit.
talk about that later?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Can we someday maybe have a demonstration of a Chromebook? I've never actually even seen one. I don't know what it
Funny you
looks
should
like.
mention that.
Okay, and is there a process in place, especially I'm concerned about the ones on the carts, that making sure they're all functioning? Is there a process for the kids to say, oops, this one's broken, does he just throw it back in the cart, or is there a process for him to identify it as needing?
So there is a process. It doesn't always work perfectly, but we worked really hard. Our staff this year in technology, along with the summer help, went through every single Chromebook cart in the district, relabeled everything, renumbered everything, so a student can't take one from the middle and then just kind of put that at the end if it's not working. So we know number 25 is broken, and 25, it's labeled. We know it's missing. In fact, we did have, I was going to talk a little bit about this, but they are managed devices. So what that means is you can log in with your wallingfordschools.org email, as you have, as students have, as we have as staff. You cannot log in with anything else. If you take it out of the district and we know what's missing, we mark it in Google in a place like a lost organization. It immediately is unusable. So we did have one that was stolen, was returned. So,
Within 2 hours.
Yeah.
but now that they're all, like, literally, I can't say enough about my staff, the amount of work they did this year, the inventorying and getting lists and spreadsheets of everything. So now we have much better handle on exactly what is where. And so we are able to identify those that are
Okay.
broken.
So are teachers feeling more comfortable that if they're going to develop a lesson plan that is going to involve technology, that when those devices are on the cart, that they're going to be able to perform that class successfully?
I believe they are. In most cases, the carts have 30 and the classrooms aren't that high.
So if they have yeah.
They always seem to want more.
So we will,
Yes.
we'll see an absolute increase when we get to one-to-one. Because right now, teachers are still, they have to plan well ahead of time and make sure that there's a cart available. So, with that, it comes, a slowing up of the process of moving more towards the Google Classroom all the time.
And that really speaks to the slide in front of you. With an initial slide, we talked about the number of carts in each of the high schools. Even though that's a lot of Chromebooks that are out there for student use, it's not enough to satisfy the needs of every teacher who's teaching during the same block of the day. So we're finding an increase in demand because teachers really need steady, reliable access on almost a daily basis in order to truly implement it and integrate it into their teaching practice. So now our dilemma, if you will, is do we go for a cart for every classroom, or do we look at leading into a Chromebook for each student, which is the more financially prudent option? So that's what we'll explore. So I think, Mike, you
Well,
first.
it was Roxanne was
Oh.
next, and then Mike.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so I kind of want to go back to the conversation that Jay and Sal were having. And I know obviously this is a high school presentation, but I'm just trying to get an idea of looking at these stats, like September 2017, for faculty using Google Classroom, do we see, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, and so if I am, then that's fine, and don't worry about it. I'm just curious, how do those numbers vary to elementary and then middle school, just roughly? I'm just curious who's driving it in the district.
Sure. I don't have statistics
Yeah,
for the
and I
other
didn't expect
schools.
you to. That's not putting you on the spot,
Middle
otherwise.
school, I can tell you heavy use, very heavy use. This
Middle
year,
school. But we kind of piloted it at the middle school. Am I right in saying that, at the middle school level?
I'm not sure where it started.
Is that a choice of
We
words?
we didn't necessarily. I think the middle school and some schools choose to use their open choice money at the time, as well as some other district funds.
Right.
So it became more. The availability was greater there.
Yeah.
And I think
Um,
probably they were initially bought under the state grant for the testing, and we test a lot of middle school students as
So
opposed
that was
to
where
high
they
school.
ended up getting the infusion
So-
of that technology.
Gotcha. And then elementary is?
Elementary, we originally only had it in the 3-5s, in the 3-5 schools, and now we've moved down to grade 2. So they are always asking, we have budget meetings coming up, and they are always asking for more. I just had a request last week from Rock Hill, and they have one per pod, and they want more. They want them in their classroom so they can use them as a center. And when we did the second grade, that's what we did. We had older technology in the classrooms, companion touches that were bought probably 7 or 8 years ago.
Actually, 9 years ago.
Okay, 9 years ago.
Actually, it was right before.
So we pulled them out and we replaced them with Chromebooks in the second grade. So they're used as a center. So a little different than they are at the middle school or high school. But
And I don't mean to derail the conversation.
Yep.
I was just kind of trying to get a framework from a district perspective. Thanks.
Mike?
I apologize if I missed this before I got in here. I know I got here late. Now, it's, from what I've heard, most schools or students that have Chromebooks, they have their own, they take it home, back and forth from school to home. We are not at that point yet, and that's why that next step thing is up there probably.
right, we're going to talk about that.
Not that I say I don't totally agree with that concept, but I think that's what's going on. And the kids have to sign off for it, and parents have to sign up
Right.
off for it, that, they will make sure that if there's any damages, they have to pay the damages and all that. So that's maybe going to be our goal, we're not sure yet. maybe I missed this too, how much professional development have teachers received so far in the use of the Chromebooks, not only in using them, but applying them to their instruction?
We're going to talk about PD for, yeah. PD, we're going to talk about PD coming up, and if that may answer your question, can you hold on that part of the PD question?
I guess.
I think just,
Yeah, you can
yeah,
wait.
just to, just to give you some information, teachers over the last several years have had PD in using Google apps for educators, Google Classroom. I don't know if you were present in the room when Sal talked about the fact that some members of our faculty are Google certified trainers, so they're able to provide assistance to their colleagues. So that's at one level of development. So in terms of how can you realize how successful they are with instituting that PD, the number of users who make use of Google Classroom on a regular basis, that would show, that would be the evidence of how successful that PD is. What will be coming up in future slides is where we want to push PD moving forward, so that we can use the platform in a more enhanced way.
Well, it would be, I would think that if we go for Chromebooks for each student, then that will certainly drive where the PD would go. Dr. Menzo, in the budget, have you planned for this in this coming year's budget, what to purchase for this, or have you have not gotten there yet?
It's
or?
October 10th.
I know.
We are having our first month. We are having actually our first budget
on,
meeting
you
this
have it in.
Friday. A month earlier. We're actually starting the budget a month earlier this year. I think what we've done in the past, and Karen and I, we've been fortunate that we have been able to use the 1% in the past. This year, we of course pressed pause on that because of the special education circumstances. I think we are going to be planning ahead. We do have a timeline that's in the presentation. It's all subject to change based on budget allocation and where we stand. But our goal would be to look in that arena. Our middle school, which they had open house tonight, so they couldn't be here. But what we're looking at the middle school right now is that it's really universal access. There is pretty much a Chromebook for every child. So if we wanted to, say every child could take home a Chromebook starting January 1st in the middle school, if that was the board's decision, we could potentially do that. I wouldn't recommend that because we have a lot of rolling out, and Karen would not be too pleased because there's a lot of organizational strategies that have to occur, and there's policy the board has to put in place.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of capacity, actual hardware capacity, we're in an incredibly good place at the middle school. I think we're in a good place at the high school. The plan that you'll see accounts for the fact that in order to start phasing it in on a full-scale initiative, and Karen has been fortunate enough to be able to get data from other districts who have done this, so we're trying to learn from people's mistakes, that there is definitely a way of doing it that ensures greater success. So that's what we're looking to put forth. So the cost it's not a Chromebook for every child where we're going to be looking to buy 3,000 Chromebooks. The cost there is still a cost there, but we are factoring that into our plan. It'll most likely be in our strategic plan under curriculum and instruction, and cross-reference to technology, as it has been in the past.
As well as money for PD.
Yeah, and that's why it's in curriculum instruction too, because we put the two together. They usually run in tandem, so it's the hardware and then it's the PD.
Thank you.
Yeah, one more, if I may. Yeah, we have a mentoring program for new teachers, for veteran teachers to support new teachers new to education. Have we considered a reverse mentoring program for professional development of young teachers that are very comfortable and experienced in the use of technology for instruction to pair up with those that aren't?
It's definitely something. Sorry, it's definitely something to consider. I don't think. I think that. Again, I think that Google Classroom is not being used at the college level to the extent that we're expecting teachers to use it at a high school or middle school or elementary level. So I think that the proclivity for them to become potentially as digital citizens as we've heard that term before, or natives rather than digital, citizens, or immigrants. The fact is that I think they come with a greater understanding of how things work. So once you have that understanding, your brain is mapped a little differently, that it just tends to fall into place. So I think it's definitely something to look into. I think I don't want to sell short our veteran staff. I wouldn't want to suggest, and I don't think you are either. But I'm not suggesting that. I wouldn't want to suggest that the 15% to get to that 100 at one of the schools at Lyman Hall is of a certain
No,
tenure.
I just mean in general.
Yeah. So no, it's definitely
There's
something.
some of the people that are more comfortable with using the technology, having to support those that are less comfortable or less experienced.
And I think it's
I don't mean a
sometimes.
particular product, just the use
and
of
I-
technology and
I think the
instruction.
other part is that percentage sometimes could be skewed in the sense that it's not just that they don't use it because they don't know how. It's also, which ties into Mike's point about professional development, is that they have to understand the authentic nature of how it could be used. How can you use this in a more performance-based setting? And again, if you don't have that access one-to-one, then you're not able to dole those out to the 20 kids in the class or 22 kids, the reluctance to use it might be there. So I think it's, as Joe said, and then followed up by Rosemary, it's the combination of making sure that the access is there on a daily basis for those ancillary classes like music, for example. Thinking about how to use this, besides just as a communication tool for, assignments and lessons, but how could it be authentically embedded? Now, I know some of them are definitely using it that way, and they're saving some money for the school district by using it, because we don't buy certain things anymore that we once had to buy. But I think it's one of those things too, because in talking to some teachers in some of those specialty areas, it's just making sure there's that authentic connection. So I think that's where the professional development will come in. But I have to say, looking at that data, knowing where we were last year and where we are today, I'm very proud of the hard work that the teachers had put forth and the administrators with their support and Karen's leadership. I think we've grown significantly. And I know that Rob and I had conversation at the beginning of this whole process, and it was moving that boulder uphill. And I think that we've definitely been able to get some momentum. And I think that people see the value in it. And now that, again, some resources are no longer available to us because of other purposes or other reasons, I think we're going to see the increase. Just today at our high school principals meeting, we were talking about an added opportunity for teachers to really use Google Classroom, that they were provided with another resource that now it's easier for them to do it within this arena and safer for them to do too. And that's the other part I want to underscore, that Karen has really led the district in a safe way in implementing this. And I think that we sometimes could take that for granted, but knowing that our students' information, our students' safety is utmost important. She has been extremely deliberate in making sure that we follow everything to the letter of the law, as well as making sure that we put in those safeguards. And I know I can rest a lot better at night, and I know parents should be able to rest a lot better at night, knowing that we've had those structures put in place. Like she said, that I know the one that was kind of stolen, because of the safeguards that we put in place, that was recovered immediately. And again, that if we had rushed, which I think we've been very deliberate, we might have missed that opportunity. So whenever possible, I need to thank the team for their hard work on this, because it's not easy. This is not an easy thing. And a lot of districts did it. They went 0 to 60 with iPads, and now they don't know what to do with all those iPads because the technology changed and they got stuck with all these iPads. So the Chromebook, we believe, is a reasonable investment. It's a cost. It's really a cheap investment, to be honest, compared to what we pay for other technologies. So, sorry.
And just, Jay, to speak to your point about the mentoring, even though we don't have a formal partnership between tech-savvy staff with people who are in a learning mode, within our buildings, people do understand who are the tech people to go to. And they do seek them out. They do use them as a resource. Those people who are identified as the go-to Google expert, if you will, they enjoy that. They always are helpful to their colleagues, and we find that that's a great relationship, and we're able to capitalize that when we do different building PD because we can customize. In fact, at Sheehan, we have a series of school-based created webinars where it will support the learner where he or she is, so they can enter into the training at their point of expertise and then grow from there. And that was something that Nick Ives, our library media specialist, had developed. So there are different ways, even though they're not formalized. And I think, Joe, you're up next for the next slide.
So what we're looking to do is provide our students with universal access. Each of them receiving a Chromebook obviously provides our teachers and students with the opportunity to really promote personalized learning, to support it anytime, anywhere. Like I talked about earlier, even have access, our teachers can have access to our students on snow days so that they can access them, relay some assignments. A lot of our teachers are doing a flipped classroom where they're sending them the lesson ahead of time, allowing students the night to review it so students come in better prepared for the actual classroom instruction. Enhancing collaboration, really student to student, is a huge part and a huge piece that Google Classroom can do. It allows us to continue to differentiate instruction and implement student-led activities. I'd like to say one of the most important, I think, functions that our teachers have been focusing on, and one of the reasons I think you've seen kind of a slow and steady growth, is that teachers are not willing to sacrifice instructional integrity to just jump into use on a computer. They really want to make sure that they're not damaging or hurting students' instruction in order to just move forward with the computer. So they're really taking their time to implement control.
So, what happens when the student doesn't have internet access at home? Because you were talking about working snow days and sending things in advance, which is great. But what about those students that don't have access in their homes?
So that's still an issue. There are students that don't have it in home. We have Wi-Fi in school. They can access it during their study hall. Our public library has the ability for them to have access. And what we are finding is even those students that might not be able to access it on their Chromebook can access it on their smartphone. So very rarely does a student not have a way to access Google Classroom from home. It might be on their smartphone, which is not ideal, small screens, but they do have a way to get key information, and then they could still use the Google Chromebook to prepare for the next day.
Thank you.
Next slide. So a couple of the things that we've done already to prepare for this, and one of the things that I know Karen and I have spoken about at length was making sure the infrastructure could handle that many computers on our Wi-Fi system. So Karen, as Dr. Menzo said, has worked extremely hard over the past few years, working with our providers to make sure that we can handle the increased load if we went to everyone in the high school with Wi-Fi access. And they'd have multiple devices. So right now, all the kids have their cell phones, which they can access with the Wi-Fi network on, and Chromebook. We haven't had any issues as of late, and we've been assured by the company that our infrastructure can handle that increased load on the network. So we're very confident, I should say, that will work. We've surveyed parents and students, again, checking on access, how many have access at home. A good portion, I don't know the percentage, I don't think, it's coming up. The Wi-Fi percentage at home is coming up, so we'll be able to answer that specifically. One of the biggest pieces moving forward is developing those Board of Ed policies, protocols, and procedures, and the protection plans. So if a student loses it, and this is coming up in a little bit more detail, it gets stolen and reported stolen, you know, who's responsible for the cost, who's going to pick up the cost, and what would that cost look like? The professional development for teachers, that's been an ongoing process, at least the 3 years I've been here, that the district's been working on. Just the most recent example would be during the teacher-led professional development. A number of our teachers organized on their own sessions that they felt comfortable instructing, and it was probably some of our best attended sessions that they went on their own to get that professional development to utilize different technologies. And the communication plan home for families, so they know what to expect when we're looking to move forward with this, and what their obligation is to the district once we move forward. Thank you.
So the last two years, especially now that E-rate has allowed districts like ours to take advantage of Category 2 funding, we've been putting those dollars, which we basically get a 50% discount for our district, to use for infrastructure upgrades. So we've increased both the speed of our internet access through our buildings back to Sheehan, which is our hub for the district. And we've also worked very hard at upgrading the wireless infrastructure. So we, as Joe had said, we are confident that our wireless network can handle the increased use of Chromebooks in the district. Next slide. Last spring, we surveyed parents. We did a phone and email survey because we wanted to make sure that we really hit every family. And we figured if they didn't have internet access at home, getting an email probably wasn't going to be helpful. So we did also do it in English and Spanish. And these are the combined results of the surveys. So as you could see, over 96% of our families do have internet access at home. And the majority of them do have a device for students to be used for homework or schoolwork. You can also see that in most cases, they're using them both before or after school and on weekends. I think there's a question.
Yes.
What were the return rates of the surveys?
So I believe we had about 10%. I'm trying to think. We had about a little bit over 10% return rate.
That's not a terrific return rate.
Yep. So the rest of the survey involved what the students use them for, and you could see the majority of there's a big bulk that are using them for Google Apps, including Google Classroom, and then all of the above is an additional 30%. So
Karen, if that is true, that 91% of the, was it 96% have internet access and 91% have devices, then we really do have everywhere.
Well, that's a 10% of our population. as
Yeah,
far
but
as-
assuming, so say you just asked all the kids in the classroom, ask them in class today.
Right, I guess, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, is there a better way to survey, to get a bigger sense of our population, what really is?
yeah,
The number
it is
of-
possible we could possibly survey the students.
That's
I
anecdotal
can
too,
tell you
but
what
it's-
this doesn't say. This doesn't say that they have one computer at home that 3 kids are fighting over to do their work. It doesn't say that they're using their mom's work laptop to do their homework. And those are the kind of, I mean, I know when I had 3 high schoolers, I had to get 3 devices, because one couldn't wait for the other one to be done. So it doesn't answer those questions. We do have, as you said, the majority of our families, according to this survey, do have something at home. But it doesn't answer all those questions
Yeah, I
either.
guess what I was trying to understand, those that do have access and devices at home, are they able to access pretty much everything that they'd be able to access in school? Everything they need to access?
So anything in Google Classroom, and it's a good question, anything done in Google Classroom or Google Docs, their mail, they are able to access anywhere they have an internet access. So if they go to Starbucks with their phone, they can call up their documents, spreadsheets, email, any of that. So and that's one of the reasons why I think staff love it too, because it's not, oh, I brought my laptop, but I did my file on the desktop here, now I don't have it. It's accessible wherever you are. And that's the beauty of it, really. So
So is it pretty much everything they need? It's pretty much everything
I
they
would
need?
say in the majority, unless they're taking either specific, at the high school level, specific classes, say, and they need CAD programming, unless they need specific software, it is pretty much the majority of what they're
Courses,
using.
Maths,
I mean,
well, yeah.
am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think 90% of what they need to do can be done
It's
in
right there.
Chromebook with no issues. There are some specific programs, whether it be for yearbook or CAD or engineering, that would have its
Course
limitations. But no, it would be much greater access, and if we eventually do look at going to more and more textbooks online, this is the method in which they could get those textbooks online.
So last year, just to add to that, we took out a middle school computer lab that had traditional desktops and replaced them all with Chromebooks. This year, we actually put them in a cart because we went more universal access. But there are very few things that they couldn't do on the Chromebooks. There are a few tests that we're required to administer that do not run on Chromebooks yet. But what the middle school students need day to day, it works just fine. So.
So we really are at anywhere, anytime, right? I mean, if we've got 3,000 devices, and they're mostly all for the kids, that's 50%. And if something like somewhere near 50% of the students have their own devices at home.
We're not going to be looking to potentially have, because if we have, say, 5,800 and something students, 3,000 is the vast majority in the sense, not just, obviously numbers wise, but age eligible. Kindergartners aren't going to have universal access. First graders are probably not going to. So you have to already take out that little group, and it's not that little, but those grades, you're closer to universal access than you think.
So that's pretty good. I mean,
Yes.
if Google's provided us the platform that can be accessed anywhere.
Well, and the
I know
Chrome.
these kids for 90% of the stuff.
Yep. And the Chromebook, as long as you have internet access, it does allow, as was mentioned, to get onto the textbooks. As long as there's a website, it'll let our middle schoolers, once we're able to have the student-facing and parent-facing element of Watson, it'll have that capacity, so you don't need another device for that. You don't need special access. It gives them that access.
And Jay, in case you were interested in giving it a try, everyone on the board, because we all have the school email addresses, while we don't have the same access because we're not in a class, we do have and I know you get your packet electronically delivered. That's the Google Docs. That's what
Right.
kind of what they're using. So we have a little bit of an ability to see kind of what the students are doing. And I don't know, could you set us up like a fake classroom for a board?
Yeah, we could do
Like
that.
a Board of Ed classroom so everyone can have access and kind of see
I'll
what
be
the
the
kids
teacher.
are going through.
We'll need some PD sessions.
Yes.
To me, that's a huge opportunity for additional parent involvement. Right, it's all right there. They get on with the student. They can see
Right.
the whole classroom there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they can see where
And I can
the
tell you,
students, especially working, they review the teacher's notes and help.
it's
them
absolutely
with that.
being utilized district-wide. I have my children in the district, obviously, and I get constant messages from Rock Hill through the system, alerts, and constantly from my children, whether it's updates on a field trip, just a positive note. So it's definitely being utilized across the system to benefit us as parents.
And can you
Kathy?
see how they're doing in a particular?
No, I mean, to see how they're performing in high school, it's power school, you don't necessarily need a Chromebook, but if everyone had a Chromebook where they didn't have a piece of technology before,
Yeah.
now they would have.
I think it's just access to the Google.
Right.
Yeah.
Google,
And the thing is, we do want to have balance because hopefully by the time a student is a junior or senior, that their mom and dad don't have to be
Yeah, no,
as
I'm thinking
engaged.
earlier. I'm thinking
Because
earlier on.
because the thing is that when you get to college, remember the students, they're not going to be sharing their
Yeah, I'm
classwork,
thinking
hopefully at that
elementary
level.
I'm
Kathy?
thinking elementary school, middle school.
So, is there a need for parents to get some sort of training so that their kid is at home and they know they're supposed to be able to get into something on Google Classroom and they're having trouble, and parents are throwing their hands up, going, "Well, I can't help you."
That's
So-
coming up.
Oh, okay. I didn't. I
Spoiler alert.
Can you pass them out, Carrie?
Anyone else?
So Carrie's going to pass out 2 Chromebooks. This is the model we're currently buying. It's approximately $200. That includes the management license that I talked about earlier that makes it a managed device. When you open it up and turn it on, you can only log in with a Wallingford Schools email, as I mentioned earlier. So you can see it looks like a laptop. What's different about it, Kathy, as you mentioned, is you can't install software. So if a student takes it home and wants to install some game, and they're not going to be able to. They can use apps that are designed in the Google Play Store, but we control that access. So we can put those apps on, we could take apps away. And we do it globally. I could do it from my desk, put things on or take them off, which is great when you think about managing 3,000 plus devices. I also put typical repair costs, screens, about $30. Keyboards are a little more because of the trackpad. But you can see, you can actually try to pull. It's not easy. I mean, I don't know if you've used a laptop. It's not easy to pick off keys. You really have to go down and pick them off. Not that they don't do that. Not that they don't do that.
Or you have to let the bird get at it.
Or the bird.
In ag.
But we also feel that if it's assigned to one particular student, we're going to know who pulled those keys off, and it's going to be easier to get those fixed. And when you think about $200 and you think about the cost of student textbooks now, they probably have more than that in their backpack already, as far as when you add up all their textbooks. So. I also wanted to mention when we first bought them, the batteries lasted 4 hours, and now they're up to like 6 to 8. But the price has remained the same or gone down. These last models, this is an educational model, and it has like rubberized corners. So when they drop them, they tend not to break. So each year we kind of evaluate and say, okay, which model are we going to buy? Which is the best bang for our buck? And we feel it's going to last as long as it can.
So ideally, how would this work? Even though the Chromebooks are relatively very cost-effective device, we would like to phase it in starting with our 9th graders. So each student would be assigned a Chromebook, and our goal is that they would keep the Chromebook for the 4 years that they're with us during their high school career. Part of this would involve the development of an extension of our responsible use policy, where students and parents both would sign off on how they're taking care of their Chromebook and what would happen should it be lost or damaged, and so on. And one of the things that we would offer parents is an optional protection plan that they could purchase. I don't want to say it's an insurance policy, but if you think of that, it's somewhat analogous, where they pay a fee, and depending on what accidentally happens to that Chromebook during their child's use of that book, could be handled through that protection plan. Now, as Sal mentioned before, we're not the first district to think about putting Chromebooks in the hands of students. We have many of our neighboring districts have had this in practice, so we've learned from their experiences. And each and every one has some sort of policy in place, some sort of protection plan in place, and it's worked very effectively for them. So, you know, our thinking is that students here in Wallingford are not really that different than high school students in neighboring towns. So the same care that they give already to their textbooks and equipment that they use throughout the day would be the same general care, if not perhaps better, that they would put towards the technology. Okay, and then Karen will speak next.
So repairs would be handled by the IT department in most cases. We have about a 2-day turnaround, but we would give students a loaner Chromebook while theirs is being repaired. If they are covered by the protection plan, those repairs, if they weren't intentional, would be covered. And although they would be done by the IT department, we would involve the library media centers and their staff to be sort of the triage area, and possibly getting the students involved from the computer repair classes to assist with some of the replacements. Some questions?
Sorry, Roxanne.
That's okay. Yep, no worries. So what if a family doesn't have the protection plan and, you know, there's a problem with the Chromebook?
Then they're responsible for the
they
full
don't have
cost
money. They
of
don't
the.
have money. They're not gonna pay it, they, you know, whatever.
So what happens now if they take their textbook and they put it in the bathtub and they don't have money? It's the same process. So whatever we're following for textbooks, if, you know, I don't know if we know of a financial hardship. Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, there are students do lose or damage their textbooks. I think that's the best analogy. So they do have an obligation that's put in. Most of our students will pay that expense, but some don't. So there are certain things that happen. First and foremost, they lose some of their privileges in terms of if they have outstanding obligations to the school, they don't go to junior prom. They don't go to senior prom. Sometimes our students don't pay their obligation to the school until 2 days before graduation, because it's very important for them to walk across the stage, and they won't if they don't have everything settled up financially.
So what about our families that sincerely have financial hardship?
Similar to what happens with the sports activity fee, we would
You know,
go
those
through a
families
process
are
with
in
that.
schools. Yeah. Thanks.
Question. I have a question. What about families with multiple kids? So I'll use myself as an example. I had 5 kids. That $30 times 5 is a lot more than $30.
So
Is there a
most
discount
schools
for-
do some kind of like a family maximum.
Okay.
So
Dominic?
Are we self-insuring this? Or are we gonna have a policy?
no, we're looking to self-insure. I can tell you, I've done a lot of information gathering from other schools, and some have used a company to do the actual insurance plan. And even the ones doing that switched over to self-insured. And I'll tell you the case in point. Kathy, you have insurance, and you don't. You accidentally spill your soda on top of on top of Kathy's, or the other way. So they're able to, the school district was able to say, okay, we'll take your insurance and we'll fix her device. And you don't have that kind of leverage with an outside company. So.
Next slide. So here's the questions that we've been asking: loss, theft, or damage. Loss, the replacement would be the responsibility of the parent or guardian. Theft, following a police report that would be filed, they could make a claim, and whether or not they had the insurance policy obviously would be a big key there. But the police report is necessary to report theft. It helps us to cut down on items that were lost, but they're claiming were stolen. When we get the police involved and it becomes a more formal process, it really helps us to make sure that theft did occur. That's the same with current cell phones and things that we deal with. And damage, so product defects will be repaired or replaced under the manufacturer's warranty, and damage is not covered by the warranty or the responsibility of the parent or guardian.
So as we've been going through the slides, there have been many very good questions that have come up in terms of how will we handle this, how will we do this, and so on. So clearly there's a need to develop policies and protocols to handle many of the issues that have been discussed so far. As Karen mentioned, she's done a lot of research with neighboring schools, so we have copies of the programs that they have in place in terms of their building protocols, their Board of Ed policies. We also have a unique perspective where many of our teachers at the high school have children themselves in a high school setting. So they see it from a parent angle in terms of, yes, this is why I purchased the protection plan, this is how it helped me, so we have both ends giving us some information. And more importantly, CABE, which of course we're members of, they have model policies for us to look at and use to develop whatever we put in place. So just like any new policy or protocol that we've established, it would be a very thoughtful process moving forward.
So professional development, we've talked about quite a bit. I'll just highlight one instance. So at Lyman Hall right now, we have a technology PLG. I had a number of teachers talked to me last year about running a very specific PLG based around technology, and they're charged this year with kind of really diving into Google Classroom, as well as all the other technologies that we use, and then are going to bring that knowledge to our staff. So we're using our own in-house experts, like you talked about earlier, Jay, to really train up the staff that needs a little more support. The use of technology to differentiate instruction is key. What I think is most important is that we're really focusing on technology enhancing education and enhancing the instructional process, not just as word processing and using it for the sake of using technology. So we really are trying to improve the product that we're producing by allowing them to utilize technology to better their education. Next slide. That's me. And here's our current timeline. I would focus your attention down to the asterisk at the bottom, that this plan is very dependent upon funding. Obviously, we don't know exactly where we're going to be in the next year, but if everything goes the way we want it to, we would be looking at beginning currently with developing those policies and submitting to you for approval, developing our building protocols, and how we're going to distribute and get the initial implementation, the initial computer Chromebooks out to their students, messaging it to parents, like you talked about earlier, Kathy, to make sure parents are prepared and ready to take on these technologies and understand some basic use and guidelines. Fall of 2018, the Chromebooks would be assigned to our current 9th graders and distributed in each of the 2 high schools. And then you could see each of the following years after that, adding them to our 9th grade classes, so that by the end of 2022, we would have every student at both Wallingford high schools with a Chromebook.
Yes, Roxanne?
So, just based on this, do we know, it's a great timeline, but probably not realistic, but it's a good timeline. If we followed it for fall 2018, how many additional Chromebooks do we know? How many would we need to purchase?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The current plan would be to purchase about 500 split between the 2 high
So
schools,
about
that we could.
$100,000.
No problem.
And is PD worked into this timeline?
PD is
I don't see it on here.
it's already started. So PD's been ongoing for the past, like I said, the 3 years I've been here. And yes, PD will be embedded throughout the entire process during our. Dr. Menzo has us sit down at the beginning of the year when we do our retreat and put together our professional development plans. And part of both of our professional development plans throughout the year is to infuse technology professional development.
Joe, my concern is that if you're hoping for a year from now, fall 2018,
Right.
that your PD would have to be done before then,
It would be done in
at least some PD.
Yes. No, we have ongoing PD throughout this year.
Their plans for this year
Yes.
reflect the PD that would be needed for teachers to be planned for next year, to be ready for next year. So their PD plans that they worked on in June and August reflect work to be done this year with teachers, this academic school year, with teachers on technology integration.
And in the grand scheme of the
And it'll
building.
continue though, Mike. It's not just going to be 1 year. It has to be an ongoing.
And it's really focused, so we get to focus on just our 9th grade teachers to start with, so it's a very controlled group. But we have been doing it district-wide and really all building-wide for us since I've been here on different.
I hate to be a pain with that, but
Sure.
I think it's a real issue. I think anytime something new is introduced to anybody who's not used to doing it, it's very hard to change and implement your whole way of
Absolutely.
teaching, your strategies and your techniques. And I really think it's serious and important enough to make sure that all those who teach 9th grade, if this is going to happen in the fall, are prepared to do something with the Chromebook and to integrate it into their strategies. Because don't forget, we're talking about 80-minute period. So,
Right.
I mean, and especially as you write here, use technology to differentiate instruction, use technology to implement student-led activities. That isn't easy to do on a normal basis, and now you're going to ask them to use a Chromebook to do it. I hear too much, been in the business long enough to know teachers aren't crazy about change, and I say that with all due respect, teachers out there, TV land, because I know I was one of them, and I just feel they really need to go into this feeling comfortable that they can really use it. So it's great to spend the money, but I'd say hold off unless these people are prepared to use it in the fall of 2018. I really feel strongly about that.
The thing that I think the best way to teach somebody is by them learning themselves and using it themselves. And I think that's what we've done over the last 2 years in particular. There isn't a curriculum document that is not on a Google site. There isn't an agenda or a series of minutes. Everything that, and again, those are low level, but even if that's the basic expectation of having a teacher be able to share documents, have a collaborative moment with their colleagues, like was mentioned at professional learning groups, having those opportunities to experience themselves, I think has led to greater success. And that was deliberate. Because again, it's tough. You just put it in front of a person and say, now use it with kids. And I haven't experienced it. I haven't been able to touch it. I haven't lost something, which you really can't lose because I learned that also from Miss Latour. But the thing is, yes, you really should. You really should. But the fact is, between the two of them, Karen and Carrie, you're in good hands. But I think that's really made a difference in people's comfort level. I'm not saying everybody is perfectly comfortable, but there's very few things you could escape in our district right now that, in terms of Google, because we are just using it just authentically. And I think that's important. That was a key decision.
And just to add to that, right now, if a teacher plans a lesson, they may not have access to the Chromebook carts in every class they're teaching. So that would make it difficult to have two lesson plans, one with the technology and one without. This plan, if you're in a 9th grade and all the 9th graders have one, that's going to make all your 9th grade classes be more the same plan, if that makes sense.
Kathy?
Okay, so I might have zoned out while you were explaining this, but I'm looking at the fall 2018 Chromebooks are assigned to every student in grade 9. Get it?
Yes.
Okay, I get that. 2019, now I'm no longer in grade 9, I'm now in grade 10. So add incoming grade 9, so the new kids that are coming out of grade 8.
So at the start of the 2019 school year, we'll have both 9th and 10th graders with Chromebooks.
Why does it say grade 6 to 10? That's what's confusing me, I guess.
Yeah, it really should say 9, 10. So it'll be 9, 10.
Okay, I mean, I was thinking,
9,
I
11.
understand the kids in middle school have, the 6 is wrong. Okay,
Because
that's probably what was throwing me off.
because the middle schools have
them.
access,
Right,
right.
right. So
But
I
it's
was-
confusing, I could see that here now.
And what was concerning me was this, did this mean that every year we were going to have to add even more Chromebooks, adding to our expense? Is that a,
It'd be
Yes.
generally the same number.
Well, I think what you do is what we've always talked about in the district, and we've been able to do this, is that we've been able to put in a line item in our budget that's been protected of approximately $100,000, if not a little bit more each year. So we've been doing that on an annual basis. So this really isn't an added expenditure to next year's budget. It's a sustaining of this present year's budget and past year's budget. So we're not trying to overshoot ourselves. That was where really, to again Karen's credit of coming up with the grants, writing grants that were awarded, got us the momentum that we don't need to, like money districts. They had to buy 3 years of Chromebooks at once. We didn't have to do that. So now we just have to keep replacing the 1 year, and then we recycle out. So we recycle down other.
Right.
So it's the $100,000 pretty much on an annual basis.
okay, so
Right.
then my other question is, well, two questions. How do the Chromebooks that are in the kids' possessions get updates,
So they actually happen automatically.
regardless of where the device is?
Regardless of where they
Oh,
are,
perfect.
as soon as they
Okay.
connect to the internet, they'll get the latest version. Unless we turn that off, and we do turn it off around state testing time, because they say, okay, the test is only up to this version,
Yep.
so we freeze it, so.
Okay, and my other question is, what's the life expectancy of a Chromebook? We're talking about giving it to the kids in 9th grade, and they hand it back in when they graduate in 12th, so that's 4 years. I think it's probably, is that like
It's
the lifetime, like,
Pretty much that. It can be used a little bit after that,
but I mean,
possibly
the
another
12th
year,
grader isn't
but
going to be handing it off to a 9th grader. The 9th grader's probably going to getting a new one.
no,
right?
we would like to give the 9th grader a new one,
Yep.
especially because I don't want to get into this scratch was here when I got it, and
Yeah.
so and some schools have done that, and they're taking pictures of it. This is the condition it is, and you don't want to get into that with
Right.
parents. So the plan really would be to take those, and if they still had use left, funnel them down to the younger grades.
Okay.
So they'd be in a cart somewhere.
Roxanne?
you asked a couple of my questions, but, so is that based on the fact that the life expectancy is roughly 4 years? Does that, am I saying this right, that we would, if we commit to this, it would be a line item, and I think you kind of alluded to this, Sal, of 100,000 every single year to regenerate that 500, roughly. Each class is slightly different, but roughly to introduce
That's
that
correct.
500 Chromebooks. I mean, that's, you gotta,
Yes.
you gotta, it's not like sticking your toe in, you're jumping in.
Right.
And you gotta make that commitment, every single year is my gut, right?
Well, and again, we've already made that commitment
Right,
as a
right.
district the last probably 4 years.
Right.
And so it would be
Right.
just sustaining that commitment.
Right, but we also know that right now, because we haven't fully committed to a program like this, if we're in a it's a moving target line item.
Well, yeah, and of course,
But
and
that cannot be like that anymore.
well, I think that, no, and to be honest, even if we didn't commit to this program, I'll just want to be very clear,
Sure.
we couldn't do without $100,000 of technology funding a year as a school district our size.
Our size,
So,
I
because it would
completely
either
understand
go one way or the other. It could go towards devices or it's going to go towards other things. So regardless, yes, we
That's
are
it.
drawing a line in the sand, but we would have to have money in there. Otherwise, again, we built it up.
But with the 100,000 cover, Sal, I feel like that's still 100,000 above of like bare bones to sustain what we currently have in a viable.
It's not. So I would disagree with you also. It's not that. So please. Yeah, but that's a different part. So the question was about the high school. So right now, the present program is $100,000 that we use towards replacing the Chromebooks, and then we recycle them down. What we need to do is the other option, the other part of this, which was presented earlier, was the fact that we did use, and this is the part that we have to reconsider, is the 1%. That's always been the way that
Yes.
we've been getting the other levels. So it's the other part of it. So it's the 100,000 has been part of our sustained services budget. Yes. Well, no, it's dedicated to technology.
Right.
This would be the shift to move it towards high school. So it's been dedicated to technology because when Karen came, we said we needed to do that. And we were coming off lease. Remember, we had that lease purchase process? So we came off the lease, and the board said, let's not get rid of the lease money. Let's hold it there. And I think it was actually Jay in one of our conversations over at the VOAG's community room was, let's not cut that. We're going to always need to seed technology. So rather than cutting that, we kept that in there. And then and that's been used for all levels. So now we would be saying, okay, if we're making a commitment to this process, we would have to put that part for the high school level. And then the other part, we would do the 1%. So we could do a combination, because the technology, our goal would be, and that's why, we've come at this from different directions, is that, we can continue to reduce the costs because the product is going down, which is good news. That continues to be the lowest, the thing that we've been doing. And Karen has shopped our product around to every vendor possible known to man in the universe. So we've been very good with that. But if the product continues to drop, which it appears it probably will, then that gives us more purchasing power to supplement. Also, Karen, and I keep saying to your credit, because it is to your credit, we're fortunate. We have, not that we have 500 in reserve, but we have been able to keep a backup system so that as things either go wrong or we need to put some additional out there because the request has gone up, we've been able to do that very freely, which has been positive, because some districts will do it right to the nth degree, where it's the last one on the shelf. We've been able to keep a little bit of a reserve so that if there is that problem or a new activity, or, we're always coming to her with these people need 20 more, she can make that happen. But the differentiation of the two budgets, I think
Yeah,
are.
thanks for clarifying that. I think that's really important. I mean, not only for board members, but. for
Yeah, because it gets a little crazy because you don't
Yep.
want to. I don't want to mislead people, but we do have that, and it did come off of the lease purchase, which
Yep.
was good.
I do, now that you mention that. And I just want to give a shout out to Karen and your department. You guys are literally the little engine that could. You're such a small department.
There's like
And I think about, the work that you guys do as a department and
Very,
you're.
very hard.
Yeah, I know that. That's why I wanted to take a second and just say thank you for your creativity, your whole department, but spearheaded by you, the creativity, and, you know, you, like you said, you're the little engine that could. So I appreciate that.
The
Thanks.
camera guy is questionable, though.
Well,
I was just gonna
well,
say,
that's for you to
Evan's
say,
wonderful.
Dr. Menzo, not me. But whatever. Thanks.
Okay, sorry for more questions, but Microsoft Office, that's on here, I'm assuming? They can do Word documents, they can do spreadsheets, or,
Good
Some
question. No,
version?
it's
No.
not on there. But they have Google Docs and Google Sheets, which are
Are
similar
similar,
and have
okay.
most of the same functionality.
okay.
So I could tell you as an Excel lover, that took me a little bit, but I've just been able to do some really cool things with it too. So it's a wash. I'll show you later.
Okay, and if these are gonna go home with the kids, do they have cases, or how are we ensuring they're, you know?
We
you
talked
don't
about
want just throwing them in a
cases.
book bag, you know?
We actually talked a lot about cases. Many districts provide cases, many districts don't provide cases, and kind of like my kids come home with textbooks and their teacher says, cover the textbook, you know, I'm checking when you get back. We would recommend that parents purchase cases, but we wouldn't tell them they have to.
Well, wouldn't we be able to get them cheaper as a district?
We see it, I think what districts have moved in the direction is it's a great fundraiser for different
I was just
booster
gonna-
clubs and PTOs and
Oh,
school
okay.
stores.
That's a good
if
idea.
So
you-
we could get a larger quantity,
Yeah.
but use it as that type of opportunity.
Even if they're $20, it's a lot to, you know,
Yeah, because they
They're
aren't,
add, you know.
They're inexpensive.
But
as
inexpensive, I had no
far as-
idea what they would cost, so.
Yeah.
It basically looks like a sleeve. You're just putting it in a sleeve and then it goes inside the backpack inside the
Okay.
Yeah.
sleeve. It's not your typical kind of briefcase, laptop briefcase.
All right.
A
And
lot
one
of
last question.
backpacks. Oh, sorry, Kathy.
What happens
Kathy.
if,
Sorry. A lot of backpacks and messenger bags have a laptop sleeve in it already as
Oh,
well
okay.
Yep.
to
That's true.
protect in the travel back and forth to school.
okay, good.
Even like for younger kids, elementary age kids, the laptop sleeve is in there.
Okay,
And we
great.
would also ask them to charge them at home, not bringing the charger in, because two things. One, we don't want cords everywhere. And two, if they put them in their backpack with the charging brick, that is a pressure point.
Yeah, yeah.
So in most cases, schools do like a cute little video of this is how you should take care of it, and
Right.
all kid-driven. So we would look to do something like that.
Okay. Last question. What happens if, because we all know technology changes on a dime, you know, you buy the latest thing and then and 2 minutes later it's outdated. What happens if 2 years from now there's something that's better than Chromebooks? And there's something better than Google Classroom? I mean, I don't know, are we tying ourselves into one thing that you know what I'm saying? We're committed to.
So, it's a good question, and things do change all the time. I mean, 2 years ago, Google Classroom, as I explained, isn't where it is now. However, it is something we're going to have the ability to evaluate at least each year for the next several years, and we could go in different directions, I guess, if the next best thing is out there. But it is also hard to beat the Google Apps for Education, which is now called G Suite, is free for education. So it is hard to beat that. We switched to Google Mail, as you know, 2 years ago, and we were looking at probably $30,000 to upgrade our server, buy all new licenses for Exchange and everything else. And although I think the first year was a little painful, I think it's not a big deal now. And it's backed up. We have revision history. We have everything we need to run our business with it. So, and Google Classroom is becoming that for teachers and students, so.
Just, your Chromebook's not a closed platform like a Mac, right?
It is not.
So-
There are apps that are available that you can add.
I said that it's not a closed platform. So, like, Apple is an individual system, right? It only talks to other Apples. The apps are only, but an HP is like a regular laptop. It's open. So just because it's called a Chromebook doesn't mean that the only thing it can work with is Google. It's an open kind of system.
So
Explain that
just to clarify, like, there are apps that can be installed that would be made by different developers, similar to if you have a smartphone, whether it's Apple or not. But the specific pieces like Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Mail, that is Google only. So, but the development changes quite frequently, and that's great, and it's not so great if you're using it on a daily basis. Sometimes I'm like, oh, there's a new feature, but they do update it frequently. So
if I wanted to add Word,
you cannot install anything on Chromebook, so you can't add Word to it.
so I couldn't, I know, but you can, right?
You cannot.
Not, so it is a pro
Cannot.
system.
Yes. So
Okay,
as far as
so
that,
that's
it's
wrong.
right.
It's supposed to
You
sound like Mac.
you can install apps from different developers, but the
With a Mac,
right.
too.
But if you are, to be honest, my mom got a new computer, and I'm like, don't even buy Word, just use this. It's fine. And if you have a personal Gmail account, you can use it. It's free. And if you're communicating with someone who only has Word or Excel, you can save it as a PDF. You could save it as a Word doc. You could save a spreadsheet as an Excel document and send it to them. They'll be able to open it just fine. So.
So you are good. Jay, you had a question?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Okay. Anything else?
I guess that's it.
Well, so next steps, though, I mean, in terms of, I'm assuming, from a budgetary standpoint, you guys are going to start creating your budget at the high school level with this timeline in, you're utilizing this timeline. Is that?
Yes.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Which is $100,000 a year.
Correct.
Correct. And
Yeah.
the rest of the timeline, regardless if it goes next fall, the following fall, 4 falls from now,
Right,
we need to get the board policy,
right.
and we need to get all those other protocols in place.
So I assume you guys are working on that, and
That's-
we'll see that come in front of us
There's a lot of
Exactly.
for
paperwork
those
that has to
3
Yeah.
happen.
times, you know, for
Correct.
each policy.
That's why they wanted to come in October, because it is a lot of different meetings. There are a lot of different meetings that need to hear
So,
the
I mean,
presentation.
you know, and I don't want to be the sticky wicket. I'm fine with what you're presenting, but I guess from a board perspective, if any board members have a fundamental issue, this would be the time to talk about it. Is that a fair statement? I mean, as the policies
Correct.
evolve, and there'll be
Well, yeah,
opportunities.
you'll have
But I
opportunities.
mean, if you're philosophically against this direction, this would be probably a good time to articulate it, so these people aren't, they're not wasting their time formulating policies and procedures and to get shot down by the Board of Ed. Is that, I'm
No,
just
that's-
gonna articulate
That's
that.
extremely helpful.
I mean, I think that's really, and I know there's no call to action on this, but in an essence, they're really, and I'm not changing the agenda, I'm not trying to change the agenda, but, and there's nothing to take action on, but seriously, if there are any board members that are not comfortable in this direction, you need to articulate it now, so that we can vet that out, so these people aren't wasting their time.
Well, and I guess the thing is, I want to make sure there's going to be several bites at the apple.
I get that,
So
but I don't want to
the
waste,
thing-
if you found out tonight, let's just say, Sal, I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's
But
all
if you
right.
found out every single board member here was philosophically against this direction, that's going to be a different approach, understanding what our
Certainly.
concerns are, if that exists. I don't think that's the case, but I'm just saying, you're going to approach it differently, I'm thinking.
Certainly.
Jay?
Yeah, I mean, if our students don't learn through the use of technology, they're dead meat when they get out of school.
I'm not,
mean,
I'm not
that's
suggesting I'm not
everybody.
in favor of this. I
I don't know of
support
anybody
this.
out there that's
but
not
I'm
using
just-
technology to.
I
I'm just
completely
saying,
agree.
I don't know of anybody out there that's not using technology to learn.
I completely agree, but I'm just addressing,
just-
I just don't want anybody to say, well, I didn't know.
I'm just, I
you
can't even,
know.
I can't
That's all I'm
imagine it
saying.
even being
I agree.
a discussion issue. I mean, if you just look at what's being done now through the use of technology in any job I can think of every
I
day.
agree.
I can't imagine, it's 1/10 of 1% of the budget. It's like pens and pencils, for Christ's sakes. I mean, the real
Well, it is
funding
the new
opportunity,
supply.
to me, seems to be, is perhaps we don't have to buy textbooks for all the classes going forward, with all the information that's out there free now in the internet. To have curriculum developed based upon free information, rather than, I mean, we spend how much a year on textbooks?
Yeah, but you still have to spend, if you're gonna get a textbook online, you still have to pay for that.
No, we don't use the free stuff that's out there. Develop curriculum based on free stuff.
Well, some of that free
There's
stuff
loads
is.
and loads of it out
Yeah,
there.
I disagree with that.
Well, take a look on the
it's
internet, see
getting,
how much
yeah,
there
no,
is.
it's getting better. The challenge is the vetting process of some
Right.
of the free stuff in terms
Yeah,
of
but if you
making
get
sure
together
it's
with,
being-
with all the other school systems in Connecticut and do it as one, or all the others in our DIRG and do it as one, I gotta believe.
No, and it,
It's out there and
yeah.
can be vetted.
Well, excuse me?
My only concern is budget.
Exactly. You know,
I don't
I
know if I can make a, I mean, the philosophy.
I don't need that commitment tonight.
No.
I'm talking about budget.
I would like it,
That's
but-
my concern.
Yeah, no, that's totally understandable, and that's gonna be the next bite of the apple is gonna be the budget
It's gonna be a
time.
repeating,
Correct.
Right.
what's the word I'm looking for?
Reoccurring,
Reoccurring, expense. And I
correct.
think we gotta take that into consideration.
Absolutely, no, I totally agree. And so that'll be the next bite of the apple when we get the presentation in January and go through workshops. And probably soon thereafter will be the first iteration of the policy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
It's very difficult to prioritize when it comes to that stuff. You know, books, computers, you know, it's teachers.
I don't know anybody else there that's not using them, is the basic source of knowledge, rather than print these days. And there's a heck of a lot more to access, and they move through it a heck of a lot quicker, and when it changes, you got access to the change immediately versus the print. That's how long do we keep our textbooks, on average?
At least 10 years, 15 years.
Is World War II, when I was in, I'm not sure.
Yeah,
World War II was
it's in it
used.
now.
The history books, yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Well, thank you guys very much.
Thank
for
you
the
very
wonderful
much.
presentation.
Great job, thank you.
All right, so our next items. Discussion and possible action, approval of the Operations Committee meeting minutes, September 11th, 2017. Roxanne?
Yes.
Mike?
Yes.
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 And yes. Financial report, September 2017. Dominic?
Okay, so I handed out a forecast that's very similar to the format I think we used last year. I just centered it a little bit, and I will just add months as we move along during the year. Sorry. This better?
Yes.
Okay. And I was just gonna go through the different categories and give you my projection at this point. It's a little early in the year, but we're gonna project as we go along. Contingency, the full budget is projected as a surplus right now. We haven't used it yet, and quite frankly, we're hoping not to use it during the year. Next category are the benefits. At this point, projecting a surplus of about $227,000, and that's primarily between the waivers and the health insurance. Some folks haven't, not as many folks took the health insurance this year, so we think we're gonna see some decent savings there. Okay, now the big one here, the tuitions, we're projecting a deficit of $999,256. And that's primarily private tuition, is really significantly projected to be over budget.
Dominic,
Yes.
does that include if we use the 750,000?
No,
Okay.
but it is net of, we get a revenue from the state called excess cost.
Yeah.
And it's net of that, and that number is about 1.6 million. So that is not using, it's not using the 1% money we put aside, but we're projecting that type of a deficit at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Last year, at this time, there was actually, September, through September, the October meeting, we were projecting a surplus in private tuition of about $300,000, $306,000. The difference is, we're trying to get the numbers sooner. If you look at the projections last year, it looked like that cost kept going up, but while it did go up, it didn't go up as significantly as it would look like. So we're working to get the costs on the different tuitions and get them estimated as early as possible to help us manage that.
Yeah. Any questions about this item?
Yeah, I'm not,
Jay?
a couple questions, I'm not sure I'm following it all. So we're saying, so we had the 1%, which is about how much from last year?
The $700,000 is not reflected in this,
Yes.
So,
because it's a separate account.
okay, but we would use it, so it's not that we're gonna.
Correct.
Because we have a responsibility. to-
Correct. Well, we're still, yes, so of course, the bottom line is the 114 or 115 approximately.
And
That
the-
would be covered.
And then, so the tuitions, with it being this much different, $1 million different than budget in only October, how much risk is there for this thing to just keep on getting proportionally bigger? And I know Dominic just said we're trying to get a handle on it earlier, but can it move substantially during the course of the year?
It definitely.
It can, I mean, it could,
So
we
what are
could.
we gonna do if it becomes $3 million?
Well, what we're continuing to do, and Dominic and Laura are working on this, is we're monitoring all the outplacements. We're having some, very thoughtful conversation with all levels of administration, because we do have a responsibility to offer, first of all, least restrictive environment, but then also offer the services that are mandated. What we're trying to do is, obviously we've had a couple of positions that have been vacated that we have not been replacing. As we go forward and we continue to have staff that might not be coming back for different reasons, we're not replacing them, or we're doing it in a different manner than we would traditionally do. We've held back on certain purchases that are not, requirements of the system.
So how much are we expecting at this point our outplacements are gonna be for the year?
I don't know the total expenditure.
For the present year?
Yeah, for this school year, yeah.
Oh, we already must know.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
I mean,
I have
is
to-
it, yeah. Is it much different than it was last year?
Well, the
Right.
private tuitions, as Dominic said, there's this significant increase there. And again, that's the volatility that we talk about with special ed. And I think that the fact is that the volatility could be just one student who moves into the district. And that oftentimes happens. That happened last year. It's happened over the summer. And it can continue. So that's really why we're moving forward very slowly with a lot of things right now. And we're all trying to maintain calm and not be anxious and not increase the anxiety of anyone, but we are at central office feeling that anxiety, but we're trying to maintain the calm.
Sal, what's the typical cost of an outplacement?
Laura, what would you suggest?
Yeah, it really depends on the school that we're talking about, needs of the child. On the lower end, and I'm talking public and private, it might range as low as 50,000 to 200,000.
The 200,000, and then how much of it do we reimburse?
We get the 4.5 times per pupil expenditure, but they raise the threshold, so you would say we would get we would have to pay the first 60, 70.
Let's call it the 70,000 to make it even, and then we might
so
get.
on a $50,000 placement, we don't get anything.
Yeah.
On a $200,000 placement, we would get 130,000.
Well, we would get 70% of
70% of the
130. I mean,
130,
that's,
so
that number changes too,
Right.
depending on what the state's doing.
Right, so in that case,
So you get $91,000 if we get a $200,000 placement.
Mike, you had a question?
Yeah, and I know I don't need to say this to you, but I'm going to say it anyway. I get really nervous when I hear, not replacing faculty, teachers for special ed.
No, I didn't
And-
say that.
No,
So
I know what
no, I want to make sure, Mr.
You-
Votto,
you-
though.
not just-
I did
you're
not
talking
say
in
that.
general terms.
I did not say that. There were no we replaced, and we have and will continue to replace every mandated services staff member that we have. What I'm saying is we had, like, for example, at Sheehan High School, we have a staff member who left in family consumer science. They're very, very difficult to get. Those positions are very difficult to get, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, we're probably going to look at a long-term sub. So it's not special ed services, so not special ed case managers, social workers, psychologists. Those positions are not on anyone's radar to be
Well, it could've
reduced
been
or
implied that
replaced.
you didn't need
Yeah,
that.
no, and I appreciate you, because I did not want that to be stated,
And
so
just to
thank you.
follow up that case in point too, the family consumer science teacher, we did find a certified long-term sub for the duration of the year. But so I just don't want parents to view this and
Yeah,
then be
no.
concerned that there's not a certified teacher in that classroom either. We did indeed find a certified retired excellent teacher to replace in that classroom as well.
But we've
as a
chosen-
sub, as a long-term sub,
Exactly,
not as a
exactly,
teacher.
which is a significant cost savings compared to a certified contracted staff member. So there's a difference there because we all know the savings that we get when we have the substitute scenarios.
So Roxanne and then Karen.
Yes, that might.
Yeah.
So I just want to also kind of circle back around because Sal, Dominic, and myself went in front of the town council, as you guys remember, and just really for TV Land too, which we, again, in the spirit of transparency, we wanted to share with the municipal side of government what we're facing and what we're looking at right now, which is a little extraordinary. And just as a reminder, typically our 1% account is reserved for non-recurring expenses and purchases like Chromebooks, when we can do that. But appreciating the volatility of this particular account, and so early on, and again, in the spirit of transparency to everybody, that we're looking to put that $700,000 from that 1% account aside for tuitions. So that's unheard of for us. That was a huge departure for us and the commitment we've made with that 1% account. And I just want to remind everybody about the fact that we had a really great conversation with the town council. And I mean, they approved it per se, which they didn't necessarily, they don't need to approve what we do with that 1% account, but it was great for them to understand where our backs are right now and what we're looking to do to be proactive and not go to the town or the municipal side and say, wow, we've got this cliff that we're falling off of that we have to address. So again, I just want to remind everybody about conversations that we've taken to town council that I think were really a departure, but also important to keep everybody open and transparent and in the loop. So just want to share that.
Karen?
As a matter of information, I think it would be helpful for board members to have a listing of what the outplacement costs might be and how many students are in those outplacements.
Dominic, what did we budget last year? Was it around 4 million in the budget for this year? During the-
3.651.
I was close, okay.
Okay. So, and we spent last year, in fiscal year end 2017, we spent 4.2 million. And right now we're projecting about 4.65 million.
That includes transportation too, right?
No, that's tuition.
No, because
Just
transportation is a
tuition.
separate
No,
line.
transportation special ed.
No,
Still on a
that's
separate line.
Separate
a separate
line.
line.
Wow.
So
Yeah,
if
Jim.
if it's 400,000 over, if we're projecting 400,000 over last year, did I get that right?
Correct.
Then why do we have a deficit of $1 million? Projecting the deficit of $1 million?
Well, no, we're projecting over what we spent, not what we bought. So we spent 4.2 million. Our budget was 3.3. Our budget this year was 3.651. We
Oh,
think
so
we're going
we
to
didn't
spend
budget-
4.651.
We didn't budget near what we spent. Why wouldn't we have budgeted?
Dominic
Near
is
what we spent.
continuing to look into that, because again, that is an area that we want to make sure that we firm up from the special ed department, because the budget comes directly from special ed, working with staff in that department. So Dominic's been working very closely with Laura on that. Now, again, at the end of the year, there are a lot of annual reviews that occur after budget season is over, after approvals occur. So there are changes that naturally occur. However, again, we want to true up those numbers a little bit
Drop
more
off
closely.
like that, right?
No, it is, and again, I think that, Dominic alluded to the fact at the beginning that, again, at this time last year, the budget was showing a actual surplus. In reviewing the process that occurred last year with this, between the special ed and business, there wasn't anything that was done inappropriately. It was just the timing of truing up the numbers didn't happen until later in the fall. So if in reality, we probably, if we were looking at apples to apples, last year at this time, we probably were in a similar situation. We just were not aware of it until a few months into the process because the truing up of numbers had not traditionally occurred, and it wasn't anybody's fault. It wasn't about time. It was just that was the traditional process. Now with a new set of eyes in both departments, the process is being trued up sooner. which gives us the reality a little bit sooner and allows us to plan more appropriately.
Karen?
When are most annual PPTs occurring? In the second half of the year?
They tend to be in the spring, yes. They go on all year long, but
Right.
at the end of the, typically, we like to have annual reviews at the end of the year to plan for the next year.
Has there been thought to perhaps looking at changing some of those meetings to have a clearer idea of what we might be looking at in the budget?
I think that always can be considered. I think it depends, again, on sometimes the collection of the data that's necessary to make the appropriate decisions. We don't want to shortchange some of the timelines about data collection. So we'd have to look at that on an individual basis, but I think it's definitely a consideration. We've talked at central office, trying to move that timeline up, even if it's 2 weeks. 2 weeks is 2 weeks. And it does give us an opportunity to shore up numbers if necessary with the board prior to the close of the school year.
Right.
And if we have a child in district that we're questioning whether or not we can meet their needs in district, if we might have to look for an outplacement, that's not an overnight decision.
Right.
So we would be aware of that. Unfortunately, that whole unknown is when a child comes in. And we could have somebody come in with an outplacement that's a $200,000 outplacement without the transportation. So that's kind of the unknown, in our department. But we do try to really be on top of the cases that might be looking to go to an outplacement.
Mike?
So at this point, we can probably say there might be still some annual reviews coming up that will affect this year's budget, present year. Or do you think all the annual reviews are done,
So
barring any new students?
So the annual review is a meeting that you have to have every year to plan for the child. You can have a PPT at any time.
That's true.
Okay, so as of right now, I think we're pretty good with, what we have in place and who's where they need to be at this point. There are a couple things pending at this point. Some meetings are coming up that potentially could go that way. I can't predetermine that. But, I think we're kind of getting it to the point where we're in good shape at this point. I don't really foresee anything unless somebody were really to move in.
Well, let me tell you, it's a lot better than what it used to be. We used to start in March. I don't know if they start in March here now.
There's a lot of annual reviews that start as early as March.
And it was a race to see if you get there, if you wanted your appointment first, so that there'd be enough money for your child.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, we haven't gone in that.
That's the way it was.
We haven't gone in that direction.
Thankfully, those days are gone.
No.
But
No.
I'm glad to hear that most of them are done, because
Yeah.
it certainly steers us in the right direction for the rest of the year.
And the other thing is, we're really looking at what are all of our options out there? Do we, are we looking at all the public outplacements, and can a child's needs be met before we're automatically determining that a child needs a private outplacement? So it's all based on the individual child's needs, where we can meet their needs. But I am trying to take a closer look, and I will get that list of where our kids are and what the cost is.
So if we send one of our children to another public school, it's really considerably less
Oh, yes.
expensive, right?
Any other questions? No? Okay.
Okay, next line item, transportation. We expect a surplus of about $140,000 at this point, but that's also subject to different, whether we place someone out or we do some new programs and move them around the town, that could be impacted. Salaries, we think right now about a $60,000 surplus is where we're gonna be. But again, that's subject to change as people come and go within the district. Those are the items I thought made sense to project at this point. The unemployment, I think we'll have projected for next meeting. The Medicare and Social Security, other accounts, and the plant maintenance utilities, probably a couple meetings down the road. And I'm also considering breaking out the plant maintenance and utilities and separating the utilities out from the plant maintenance, because I think that might be an interesting way to look at things. I think the utilities are a little less probably controllable than some of the maintenance items. And if not controllable, at least, they're different enough that maybe we should be looking at them that way.
That's a great idea.
So what I'll do probably is keep them together so we have the total, so we can look, if we want to look back at how we did prior year, but maybe carry 2 line items for those. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Okay. Consensus on the financial report. Roxanne?
Oh.
Oh, are we gonna go over this?
Did you want to go, I feel like we only did half the picture, or did
Okay.
you go, I mean, I'm okay,
No, I'm fine too, but
but you have it B1 and B2, right?
Yeah, I just provided the Munis report.
Okay, that's
Really, this is what I start with to put together the projection. I mean, I'm glad to take any questions on the Munis report. I will tell you, the one thing I did change, this is just a little bit of a different format. It has a month-to-date actual and a year-to-date actual. The one I believe you used last year did not have the month-to-date actual. And it's got the same number of columns because the original appropriation and the revised budget, there used to be, I think the adjustment column was in between, and I eliminated that to just show you the month's activity versus the year.
yes,
Yeah,
Jay.
what happens if the state doesn't pass a budget in the next month or two?
Well, right now, we're working under the governor's executive orders. The executive orders are not favorable for Wallingford, as we know. The school system stands to lose $19 million of its $21 million of state aid. We have received some funding from the state, but only about 1/10 of what we usually receive at this point. So we were supposed to receive $5.5 million this past month, and we received $500,000. So right now, and I saw the mayor this morning, we're in a holding pattern because there is discussion, and I know I met several representatives over the weekend at Celebrate Wallingford saying that they're going back into session this week. They're trying to come up with a compromise. So I think everybody right now, while it's disconcerting and there's a lot of uncertainty, everyone is just maintaining the fact that it's not done yet, and nobody's making any sudden moves. Because remember, there are districts that don't even have a budget approved right now. So at least we haven't allocated funds. We have allocated funds to the school district. There are districts that don't even have allocated funds. They're just basically paying things as they go.
But Sal, if you received 500,000 of the 5 million you were supposed to, it doesn't have any effect on the ability to pay the bills?
Well, again, the thing is that I don't, that money goes to the town.
So it's just, the
So
town's
we have
funding
to,
it. The
so
town-
we,
the
yes, so what
town's
we have to
advancing
do,
it.
the town would be advancing it if it were needed. So what we need to do is we need to wait until the time is that this is the budget that's approved by the state legislative body. And then I'm certain, we've already had the conversation that we would be sitting down with the mayor. The mayor last week at his televised meeting said, when we were with him, that if there was a concern, because the mayor in his budget planning for this year and his tax appropriation to all the citizens, he accounted for $4 million loss from the state of Connecticut. So that leaves us with approximately a $14 million loss for the town that was not factored into the mill rate increase for taxpayers. So what would happen is he would then have to look at it. If that $14 million is the final number, then he would have to look at it by department, sit down and talk about that. Right now, what we're hearing is that, right now with the executive order, that number is the real number. However, I know there is definitely motivation on either side of the aisle to have that number be reduced in terms of, responsibility to the town. So I think, I'm not saying it's going to go to zero or that we're going to be level funded. I think, and that's why I think the mayor's being very, very cautious, is I don't think the $14 million number is going to stick. But I can't say if it's going to be 10 million, 7 million, 2 million, whatever it may be. So once we know that number, then I know the mayor is prepared to have department by department conversations as to what responsibility may be required. Because remember, he did use some of the unencumbered funds or rainy day fund that for the town already to offset the expenditures for this year's town budget. So, but towns are approaching it very differently. We're very fortunate that we have a budget.
That's key.
Because I know Roxanne in her role on CABE on the board of directors, there are many budgets,
Yeah, and-
many boards that don't have budgets.
And that's when if you've seen, and this is really for TV land, when you hear about communities that are already, I don't want to say laying off teachers, I don't think that's the right word, but eliminating programming or, making dramatic changes, that's exactly what's occurring. Those are the communities that, depending on their structure, their municipal structure, they don't have a budget. And so they're forced into being proactive. They're living month by month, literally, in those communities. So we are fortunate, you're right. And I've seen it, I've talked to people, that they never, what we got approved back in May, I guess.
Yep,
I think
May.
town council approved the
Correct.
budget officially in May. That never occurred for some towns. So that's the fundamental difference. And those folks, those communities are truly living with a trapdoor underneath them because they can't even, they don't know where any of their money's coming from.
Correct.
So that's a scary situation.
And to your point, I mean, obviously, business as usual is not going to be able to be maintained.
Right.
No matter what happens, because the budget, be it good, bad, or indifferent, we know there's going to be changes in our lifestyle in terms of a town receiving funds from the state of Connecticut. So that's why, as I mentioned earlier, we are preparing our budget documents and our budget process a whole month ahead of time. And we're taking a very different approach to it this year, even more, even different from last year in terms of, just the lean approaches that we put in place last year. We're leveraging those approaches, but now we're taking it in a different direction. Dominic and I have worked on an activity that we're going to be doing with all administrators by level on Friday, launching them into a deeper level discussion with their administrative team and their faculty, and looking at cost centers. The administrators, unless they've looked at the Munis pages, probably for the first time, many of them are going to realize how much their staff actually costs on a building level this year. Because I don't think many administrators look at their staff and say, my staff is worth this much money in this system. They need to see that. Not that I'm saying that they, other than the fact they just need to, sometimes we get lost in the fact that we're one of 12 schools, and we kind of get focused on our one little piece of the pie, which is important. I want our principals to focus on their piece of the pie. But you need to know that there's the rest of the pie that we have to worry about. So we are going to be having more of those conversations, and with the help of Dominic, again, we believe we've come up with an activity that hopefully will allow administrators to really reflect on present level of service, present use of service, and begin to have those thoughtful conversations sooner in the process rather than later. Because we're going to have many more conversations this year, we know, than traditionally has been the case.
Any questions?
It's a little different.
Well, I saw in this morning's paper, I said that they were within $100 million now on a $4 billion budget, so hopefully they come up with something quick.
We're hopeful.
We need some direction. I don't know how the heck they're going to resolve it, but they need to.
All right, so consensus on the budget. Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes, okay. Cafeteria financial report, Mr. Menster?
Okay, is that working?
Yes.
All right, good. The memo that I wrote to Sal and Dominic on how we're going to measure financials you have, we are going to keep the comparison chart that was used last year, and those numbers roll over into the summary sheet, which you have there too under cafeteria operations. And the other document that you should have is a new document for you guys, and I've used it in the past in the industry. It is a participation log that lists every school with their enrollment and their free and reduced numbers, and it gives you a breakdown of meals, how many in each category to include a participation rate, less the attendance factor that we use in the industry. If you look at the summary sheet, cafeteria operations year to date, For income, we have 196,550 and change, and last year at this time, they were reporting 189, 173 and change. So we are actually in the positive on the income, and keeping at the income level, the meal count we've generated has been considerably less than the previous year. Previous year, they reported 45,555 meals year to date, and we are recording 40,301, which is a negative almost 5,400 meals, which definitely brings to a concern to our department. And we'll continue, we'll critique that in a second. And then to finish up the detail report, the expenses year to date, last year the district was reporting 248,617 and change. And this year we are at 249,186 and change. So I handed out a marketing plan that is very essential to me and the operation. When I noticed we were decreasing in meals by the third month of September, it was a concern, and I approached Dominic, and I came up with a marketing plan that is essential for me to drive business and increase participation in each school segment. I'm not going to go over them, but it's a 2-page document that you have, and the elementary is the first page, and I've already started working on that plan. And then the second page was a marketing plan that I put together for the secondary schools, and as you can see there too, I have started pursuing that, how I could market my program and increase participation in sales. We have the same operating days as last year. We've noticed a considerable increase in maintenance and repair since the kitchens and the equipment are old. We've had expenses over the summer into the first period of about $10,000 under repair. So that's definitely a concern. What I plan on doing, and I spoke to Mark, is to be proactive. By the spring, we wanted to put together a proactive preventive maintenance program with a couple companies to bid on all of our equipment and to take a look at that over the summer, where we could start repairing these with simple measurements of just cleaning up coils and vacuuming out dust from coils. But the equipment is getting old, and it will eventually have to be replaced. Is there any questions that you have for me concerning the statistics there?
I guess I'd like to look at the other two documents you have, particularly you did a breakdown by school.
Yep.
This one?
Participation log.
Yeah, do you think you can just go over this one
Sure.
really quick?
Sure. So this is year-to-date for the 4 operating days in August, and then the month of September. Each school is listed there on the left, and with the correct enrollment and the percentages of the free and reduced that have been applied on our end. And it continues to the right, and it gives you operating days, and then it gives you the amount of meals for the free and reduced that are logged into each school. And then taking total meals and average meals, and then there's 2 participation columns. We tend to use the one on the far right because of the attendance factor. That happens every day at the school level. Instead of recording at 100%, we record it on at 94.4%. As you could be looking at that, the elementary sector are low. Is definitely a concern. You're in the high 20s, they go into the 30s, and we have 2 schools reporting into the 40%. In the industry that I've managed, elementary should be mid-40s to 50. So that's been happening here for several years, I've been told. That doesn't mean we can't turn the corner with myself running the program with the marketing that I put in place there in front of you, and it's just going to take time, but I'm thinking positive that I could drive these sales better than they were and better than they are now. The middle school's numbers are right there. The same part is, we see that DAG is into the 40% range, which is promising, and Moran is at 31. And then the 2 high schools are below the 30 range, which tend to be, the secondary schools should be in the high 30s to 40s range percent in the industry that I'm familiar with what I've run in the past.
So I just have a quick question about this. I know that this is the percent of the lunches sold that are free and reduced. Do you have any idea currently about what percent of our student population that is eligible for free and reduced are availing themselves of that?
Yeah, so the eligibility on the free and reduced would be on the left-hand side based upon the enrollment. And then the middle of the spreadsheet gives you the actual meals for the free and reduced and the paid per school. And those totals under the meals will roll over to the summary on the cafeteria operations for your meals.
Okay, so for example, I'm sorry, just because it's the first time we're seeing this, is the 27% of the free and reduced lunch on Cook Hill is what's
correct.
Who are participating. So of the eligible students, 27%
Correct.
are taking. So is there anything that we're doing to kind of target people participating? So if they're eligible, to increase
Right.
the percentage of eligible students participating?
It's a good question. What I've done in the past, working for a management company, we would send out it was called an MVP meal plan letter.
Okay.
And according to the state child nutrition people who we report to, if we were to send that letter out, it has to go to every parent.
Yeah.
It cannot be subject to the free and reduced, which makes sense. So that could be done, introducing them to the plan that the state provides. We could look into that.
Because I do know
as a-
this is the first year I didn't get one.
You didn't get,
Every year.
The application?
My kid's in elementary school, and I don't know, my son he's 10, so he's got his own organization skills at this point, but this is the first year that I didn't get one in his bunch of
Packet.
papers that he gets at the beginning of the year.
and what school does he go to?
He goes to Pond Hill.
Pond Hill. Because all the schools had the packet with the principal's packet, with the front desk, with the front office, excuse me, and they were all supposed to go out.
I mean, it
and-
could have been my son, so that's
Yeah.
why I was asking if that was
Yeah.
something that we already sent out. Are we gonna send it out again? Because I hadn't seen it, and like I said, it's the first year, so I wasn't sure if you guys didn't do it this year.
I could look into that with Karen, my clerk.
Okay.
But that's a standard procedure. She gets all that together in August,
Mhm.
mid-August, and then the front desk from all the schools have that to put in their mailers. Actually, let me back up a minute. They don't mail it out. They put it in the child's backpack for day one.
Yeah.
In the home. That's how it's supposed to be distributed.
And that's how it traditionally is distributed. It
yeah.
comes, you get a big stack of like, fill out your health and contact information, and just this year was the first year, so I wasn't sure if it was decided not to do it, if it was supposed to be done and maybe he
Yeah.
just lost it. Are we gonna do it again, because these numbers are very low?
Yeah.
Like maybe in another couple weeks, send it so that it wasn't lost in everybody's first day stuff?
What I like to do is, I could get back to you on that. I
Okay.
like to look into it and talk to the front desk people at Pond Hill.
They're wonderful, so
Yeah,
if
no,
they
they are
got it, I'm
great.
sure they did. It
Yeah.
was probably just my son. But it's also, you get about 50, any parent knows, you get about a stack of 50 things that you have to fill out and go
Oh.
through. So if our participation numbers are at 20%, maybe what we need to look at is send that out again, where it's no longer lost in a stack of 50 papers. It's kind of like the only thing home.
Mhm.
So, Yeah.
I'll definitely look
Kathy.
into that.
So I actually had a similar question. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it. So I want to use an example. So here we have Cook Hill. We're saying at Cook Hill, there's 348 students in total, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
We're saying 75 kids are eligible for free lunches, or 75 are participating?
Eligible.
75 are eligible.
Right, and it shows the percent to the right of that, correct.
So for free and reduced, out of the 75, 85,
There's
94,
94.
94 students, oh yes, they're, that's for me. Only 27% of those 94
No.
students have taken.
No,
See, that's what I want to understand.
That's 27% of the student population is eligible. So the 94 of the 348 are eligible.
So that's not
what
saying that only
percent.
27% of our free and reduced actually took advantage of it.
No, it's saying 27% are free and reduced eligible. Is what
Free
it's
and
saying.
reduced, see, that's
But
what I
that's
wanted
what
to
I
clarify.
asked
Yeah.
before.
Well, that's why I
I'm
wanted to
sorry, so-
clarify it.
All right, yeah,
That's
so-
what I
okay.
asked,
So-
yeah.
Yeah, so
All right.
the question and the answers didn't match, and
Right.
I didn't think they did either. But the reality is that, and this is, I don't think this document shares this information, so you'd have to provide this,
Right.
and we could put it in a Friday packet to the board, is that, again, the question is, out of the students who are eligible, the 94 students, how many of those 94 students are actually getting lunch in our schools?
And the reason I ask that question is twofold. One, it's critically important that these kids are getting the lunch, because we know how much that affects their ability to learn. The second thing is the financial aspect of it. We make money on this. Let's just be honest. So I'd like to see that participation rate go up as much as we possibly can get it up, because it helps the students first and foremost,
Yeah.
and it helps the budget.
And that's why I had asked about those packets, because I thought we only had a 27% participation rate of the eligible students, but we don't know necessarily
Where
what that
the
number
other
is.
70
So as far
something
as we're
percent.
concerned, the 27% are the number, is the number of eligible students that could be on free and reduced.
Correct.
However, that doesn't take into effect that there are many who probably didn't even fill out the form.
Correct. That's a common trait in,
Right.
That too,
in all
yep.
districts.
That's
They
why
just
maybe
don't fill it
sending
out.
a second time is not a bad idea.
Right.
We can
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, we do want this, I mean, if there
People's
are,
situations change too, not to
Correct.
interrupt you. I mean, you could say even in January, frankly,
Correct.
I would never want people's situations to go adverse, but that happens, I would think, no?
absolutely. And I think that that's a number that we want to continue to try to hone in on, because as much as we don't want to reach the 40%, I do believe we're closer to it than 22.9. And as we approach the 40% free reduced lunch rate, that does open opportunities for grants that we don't presently have. So I do want to make sure that we are constantly looking at that. And again, I'm not saying that we're at 40%, but as we continue to hone in on that number and make it truer, I think we're well over 30%. I think we are closer to 40% than what we might believe as a community.
And I have one more question, and that
Yes.
has to do with à la carte. This document, I love this document. I have to tell you, when I saw this on my packet, I was very excited. I said, this is great information. But this
Kathy, you get
doesn't-
so excited over the little list. Man.
I'm so easy to, yeah. Anyway, à la carte is not indicated on this at all, is that correct?
Correct. This is just meals.
Okay.
Correct.
So
A la
do we-
cartes, yep.
Since that is the potential that, so here we're saying there's only 31, let's say, or, where do we come, the grand total of 29.9%, well, that was the free and reduced. So we're saying total participation at 31.7%. The actual last cell on this document, right? Total participation at 94.40% enrollment. The
Yep.
purple column, we're saying total 31.7%. Participation.
Correct. And that's
right?
based on the
But
attendance
that's not
factor.
including à la carte.
Correct.
right?
This is just meals and participation.
Right, so I
with
mean, the à la carte component could be, I mean, it could just be a milk, but it also could be a kid buying, French fries or,
Right.
or, I don't know what would constitute à
They
la
buy
carte.
second meals,
Could-
they buy all the à la carte, and that's one of the reasons our à la carte sales were pretty good for year-to-date this year, which was 196,550, which was about about $8,000 more than last year. So they are spending, they have lucrative cash in the cafeterias.
Right.
They are spending the cash, at least
Right,
in the
because I mean, it
secondary
just concerned me
schools.
when you look at these figures for the high schools, 25% participation, it's like, oh my God. But probably most of those kids are buying à la carte stuff.
They're buying,
Do we offer a la carte at elementary, or is it just middle and
yes, we
high?
do. It's not a big seller. À la carte, we're selling the approved ice cream line and the snack line.
Gotcha.
Do you think that information could be, because this document, like Kathy said, was really wonderful. I think it gives a lot of information, but the à la carte information as well to kind of give us a whole picture?
Yeah, well, we're basing the à la carte on the comparison sheet. So if you look under, do you guys have the sheet?
Yes.
I think you do.
Yeah.
So your first line item there, your sales, lunch, and snacks is your à la carte revenue. So if you take that top line and you just go all the way to the right, it will show you year-to-date for September this year and then compare to last year. And those totals roll over to your other sheet there, which is your cafeteria summary sheet. But that will itemize the first line there. So for instance, à la carte sales and snacks for this year, year-to-date, we had 128,000 and change, and last year they had 116 and change. So we were up 11 grand on the first line item. And then the second line is the reimbursement, which is the meals, and our reimbursement from the state and federal line.
So maybe I am completely confused, but sales of lunch / snacks, those are just à la carte sales?
That's à la carte.
Only à la carte, okay. It doesn't include
The second
meals.
line, reimbursement, is meals only.
Okay,
Which is off
awesome.
that like log sheet that you just,
Meals.
the new log sheet that
Okay.
we presented.
All right, wonderful. All right, anybody else have a question? No?
Is it kind of common that September is low on? the
Yes,
number?
that's a good question, Mike. September is usually one of the toughest months of the year, especially in the elementary sector because of the students acclimating to school and the parents trying to figure out. And they usually, at least in my past years, September is a low participation month. And,
We did make
you know,
more money.
yeah. I do see a little hope, and Dominic and I noticed towards the end of September with the participation with meals, we noticed a slight increase. One of the things too I took from my operators, they suggested that we need to get the cereal meal back into the elementary sector, and we did that right away for October 1st. And coming into October, the first week, we noticed once again, it's peaking to a better number instead of decreasing. So there is some hope.
Because there's no nutritional value really in cereal. Kids will eat.
Well, it's a
kids will eat
meal.
this.
There has to.
Shauna, there's,
there has
they
to
do
be
get some,
Certain nutritional
we
value.
do have to make it a state meal, and there is protein in that diet with a cheese stick and yogurt. There is a yogurt with the cereal meal. So we can't just serve a cereal. To make it a reimbursable state meal, we're serving the 1 ounce cheese stick and a 4 ounce yogurt.
And
So-
again, the cereal meal, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I know parents do, at the elementary level, do talk to their child about their choices. So if a parent or a family is opposed to a cereal meal, then they should be working with their child to make sure that they don't choose that.
Yeah, absolutely.
so,
No,
I mean, I don't wanna-
Most parents, I'm sure, do, but you also, you have kids, and you can talk to them all they want. They get into that, and the cafeteria ladies will tell you, they'll put in the order that they remembered their mom said, and then they get in line, and they're, taking, oh, I didn't order that, right? I ordered something else.
We do, I mean, they
We
do monitor.
And they do, and they're very good about it.
So I
It's
think it's a
just-
balance,
And
but I
it's-
do want to say also that again, and as present this evening, we have the support of the cafeteria staff working so very hard, and they're making a commitment as they said they would, and they continue to do so to the children. And I can't thank them enough because it really does make a difference. And they really do want to make this a success, and I think they're showing that they are. Giving the feedback to David is key. Providing him with that information, working to the level that they do with the students to provide the service they do. We're very lucky, So while we're still discussing numbers, and we're going to discuss numbers till the cows come home, the fact is that we're very fortunate that we do have committed individuals to this program, because you could have a program, and if the people that are serving the students don't have that extra touch and that personalization, it doesn't matter. So I just want to say thank you to them specifically.
Quick question, it might be a stupid one, but I know we have this great system. Now, when a child in the morning says they're buying hot lunch, correct?
Yep.
There's no way of the cafeteria people knowing when that kid goes through the line.
Exactly,
They're
that
not
student.
buying the hot lunch? They don't have to put their.
They
in other
don't
words, when
know,
they announce,
yeah.
they do it in the morning, they don't put their number in when they tell the teacher at home.
No, unfortunately, there's not that level of sophistication. No, we are piloting with the help of Karen and David's hard work. We are piloting at one of our schools the idea of submitting the lunch counts through Google, which will be more efficient. But again, we're not going to be able to get that granular.
Because a lot of kids change their mind.
They do. And a lot of adults change their mind. I mean,
We
you
have a cafeteria worker who'd like to answer that question. If you can just come up to the microphone and state your name.
Hi, I'm Marcia Novoselli from Mary Fritz Elementary. At our school, the kids sign up, the teachers fill out the slip goes to the office gives it to me, and the kids are called in by what lunch they have purchased. And they do not switch.
Say that again, they what?
The slip that they are signed up in the morning, they have 5 choices
Right.
in the morning. And their name is put with their PIN number underneath lunch 1, lunch 2, lunch 3, lunch 4, lunch 5. And they are called in by those lunches, and they are not allowed to switch.
Oh.
Because this way here, we are not wasting.
When you say they're called in, that's the way they have to go in and get their lunch at that.
Correct.
so everybody
Makes sense for
ordering
you
meal
guys, it's
1, meal
orderly.
2.
Yeah.
It's organized.
Takes a little more work.
That's okay,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
this way here, we're having an accurate count,
Yeah.
And you're not wasting, like you
and
said.
we're not wasting.
Well, and that's key. And I think you all recall when we talked about doing the lean simulation with our union leaders. The number one person who didn't want waste was Deb in food services. She caught on to the activity like that. Everybody else was letting things go through, and she's like, "Wait a minute, let's slow down. Let's make sure we don't have waste." So that's just the philosophy, and I appreciate that because we don't want to have that waste. Because at the end of the day, you can't really do anything with that. I mean, we do donate it, which is good, but that's not what we want to make
No.
a practice in.
Correct,
So we are to assume that all schools don't do that.
correct.
No, so that's something that we can continue. And I think the Google system, once we get that going, that'll help because that'll give us more
Right, the bugs
information.
have to be worked out because you do have it where you have buses come in that are late and those kids are not allocated for. And you want them to be able to have the lunch.
A lunch, yep.
So, and you want them to have the one that they want. You don't want them coming in crying and saying, well, I was supposed to have this. Well, you weren't signed up. So, and you always need a backup because, the systems do go down.
Mm-hmm.
So the bugs have to be worked out so that we can have it accurate for us personally too.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And I just want to say, nice article in the paper on you, Dave.
Yeah.
Good job.
Great job.
Great picture, too.
I've taken better pictures. But, I usually talk with my hands, and my wife saw the picture, and I'm like,
One with the avocado.
it's a chef thing.
Oh,
Can I just, I just want to say also, I really appreciate all these strategies that you don't know if it's going to work or not, but you're trying at least. And obviously, you've got the support of your staff, so that's great. And, it'll be interesting to see what sticks. I mean, you've got a 2-page list here of marketing ideas, David, and I appreciate that. And hopefully, in the next couple of months, you'll see things clicking along and improving for yourself. So thanks for the attempts, at least. I'm
Just-
thinking creativity, thinking
Just
creative.
one last thing to note. I want to compliment my staff on the way that we're purchasing this year is, and Mike said it, or we haven't lost much money. Bottom line is we're buying the right product and they're conscientious on the production end of it. We're not wasting food, so we're managing our purchases to the full most extent, and that's part of it right there. that we're getting the right product from the vendors, and the vendors are really helping us make that strive, those numbers.
Dave, you have a question from the audience. You just state your name.
Tammy Raccio, 123 Chimney Hill Road. Last year at this time, or maybe it was the year before, we actually looked at how quick the students were getting to the cafeteria and how long it took to get through the line. And when that analysis was done, we were finding out that sometimes it was 7 minutes late if they were coming from recess. If there happened to be a teacher who wasn't on top of the clock, maybe they were getting to the lunch line 10 minutes late. And it was really cutting into the amount of time that students had to actually eat, which in their eyes, if they didn't have enough time to eat once, they just stopped buying lunch.
That's a very common thing.
So if there's, years ago, probably 7 or 8 years ago, in the Meal Pay app, I used to be able to tell the exact date and time that the purchase was made. So if I knew this was the 20 minutes of my son's lunch, I could tell if he got it in the first 5 or 10 minutes or if he got it in the last 5 or 10 minutes. But that's gone away from my visibility. I don't know what you can see, but you might want to poll a couple of the elementaries that have the lower percentage and then just look at them and see, is there a particular lunch wave that maybe they need to change their recess process or have the teachers bring the students down a couple minutes earlier. But that's data, I remember, if it wasn't last year, it was the year before, that we looked at it and there were some adjustments made. It wasn't last year because Charlene was here. So it had to be at least 2 years ago that we looked at that. But that is something that we should try to do.
Sure.
And then obviously, the ID cards that are free anyways with a photographer, and we already have the scan software. If we could pilot that at maybe a school this year and see if that would speed up the line. I've had lunch already with my son, 4th grader, and the kids at the table said it takes too long. So that's really something that we need to look at
Yeah.
again, how
It's-
quickly to get through the line. It doesn't take long once they're in and they're being serviced, but the whole, are you meal 1 or you meal 2, and then they have to wait for everybody to go through.
I've dealt with this problem before, Tammy, in the past, and we actually had some of the districts I run, we would actually time a student and then work with the principal and show them the concern, and we would come up with some type of solution, so that could be looked at.
Before we take consensus, did you want to go over this, the email you sent, which I really appreciated?
What is that? I'm not.
Your KPIs?
Yeah, the information, last meeting, we were talking about the matrix, which we were gonna
Oh,
start
okay.
collecting data on. And I know there was a point that was made, can we look at other national ideas of collecting data, what was available? It was part of, I put that in a special color so people would see it. But basically, if you want to bring everybody up to speed as to what you and Dominic came to consensus.
Sure. So,
based on your work.
just like the memo says, is the first category, sales and revenues. Dominic and I looked into the KPIs in the industry, and especially more targeted towards food service in the K-12 sector. And it basically is broken out into the sales of lunch, breakfast, catering, and a la carte. And then it goes right into your meal participation, which is your reimbursable lunches and breakfasts. And then we talked about the fourth bullet down is the daily participation spreadsheet that is new to the district that I've used in the past that a few of you have complimented on. We like to obviously keep that going in. And then the expenses are based on our food costs, our labor costs, all controllables, which would be paper, chemical, and supplies, and maintenance repair. So those all key into how our finances will be reported every month to you guys. The second bullet down is the complaint log. We've extended the one that was currently being used a couple of years ago, and we've made it more detail-oriented. You do not have a copy of that. And I have been tracking a few of the incidents that occur in the district. Hopefully not a lot of them, but there are a few out there. And it's a detailed spreadsheet that I log in there with the description, what was the impact of the summary that I did, action steps, and then final resolution steps with actual completion dates. So it's a full spreadsheet. And then coming soon, I wrote down that we talked about it last month, is I'm being trained now by our point of sale company Horizon on an inventory module. We're loading in all our items, and we're gonna get a more accurate food cost based on when that rolls out, that program. And that coincides into a production chart, which will be new to the program, and then that coincides into menu planning. And we talked about a menu planning module that I need to do my job. And that will all coincide from the current company that we're paying now, Horizon, on our register system. So we're not paying any extra money on that, which is a nice savings to my program. I'm getting to utilize the whole program of the Horizon that wasn't used in the past. And the last bullet was the elementary Google ordering, which Karen has been doing a great job in working with her staff, and we are piloting Pond Hill this week on Thursday. Danielle is rolling that out. Karen and I went over there last week and met with Danielle's staff in the office, and we showed her how it's going to work, and we decided to pilot Pond Hill. And Danielle was up for the pilot. They're excited about it. So we're going to go over there and check it out, and then we're going to have a meeting with principals and tell them what we're doing, and then we're shooting to roll this program out November 1st, and it's going to actually give us some good hard data from the daily counts that come into the managers, and we'll be able to track the 5 reimbursable meals every day and every week and see what we're actually selling. So we're kind of excited about that program that Karen is putting into Google Docs for us. And that's it.
Consensus, or, well, anybody have any questions? No? Okay, Roxanne?
Yes.
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 And yes. All right. Reimagining middle school and high school. Dr. Menzo?
All right, so tonight, I just want, you have the presentation, it's very short because at your place, you have a packet, just a quick little PowerPoint and some data. You've already gotten the data once before, but I just wanted to share it with you. Basically, the whole point of tonight is to just bring up to speed as to what we did this summer, where we are in the process, and what you can expect in December. Because this is a similar process that we followed back in 2015 in the fall. So this past July, the week of the 17th, each of those days, we had over 100 participants throughout the week, during which time we had people representing middle school students, high school students, parents, teachers, administrators, board members, community members, alumni, all came together in this room, during which time we did the following. We reviewed basically each participant individually, started off listing their strengths, about middle school, high school, weaknesses, and then opportunities. We then did a gallery walk, so everybody got to see each individual person's ideas. Then we combined into small groups. They came up with ideas, piggybacking off of the ideas from the individuals, and then we combined them into a large group. At that point, then, at the end of each session, we took those ideas, those strengths, weaknesses, and opportunities, predominantly the opportunities at that point, and we decided which ones were short-term, mid-term, and long-term.
She just like something and it wasn't me.
It's always me. And I'll wait.
Would you like me to help you?
Yeah. There you go.
You wanted the strength, right? No?
Not necessarily, but you have in front of you. Would you like to do the presentation?
I was trying to keep up with you.
Click back there. So, you have in front of you, we printed out for you the strengths, and those are the cumulative strengths from all the groups, the weaknesses, the opportunities. You also have in your packet the short-term, mid-term, long-term recommendations. So you have the presentation and then in a packet that's paper clipped, together. We have the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, short-term, midterm, long-term. So what we've done, and I have to give 100% of the credit to Dominic. 100%, if you want to put next slide. What we've done is Dominic then took the data and he realized that these categories emerged. So we had career opportunities, collaboration, communication, frameworks and structures, sports, extracurricular activities, staff, students, and teaching. So those were the trends that came from all the data. So again, Dominic did the tedious task of looking at the data and kind of putting it into those categories. Next slide. So what happened is these are, based on those categories from the first slide, these are what fell into, the categories that fell into each of the short-term, midterm, long-term timelines. So in short term, we have career, collaboration, framework, fixtures, furniture, fixture, equipment, sports and extracurricular activities, staff, students, teaching and technology. So those are the categories that comments were made in and recommended short term for review by the school district. In midterm, it was career, collaboration, framework, furniture, fixture, equipment, sports and extracurricular, teaching and technology. And lastly, long term, it was framework, furniture, fixture, equipment, sports, extracurricular activities, staffing, and teaching. Now the funny thing is, when you think about this, go back to short term, the list is really long for short term. But a midterm, it's a little shorter, and long term is the shortest. So it's a little counterintuitive because there's a lot for us to do in the short term according to what the data that was presented by the different groups, and there's the least amount to do in the long term. So we need to have time to review this. So tonight's purpose, if you go to the last slide, is just to share with you our next steps. Our next steps, which we started today with our high school administrators because we had our level meeting this week, and next week we'll be meeting with our middle school administrators, is to share with them, as we had already, reshare with them all this data. What we're doing is we're creating a Google Doc that I'll be sharing with them that'll have the short-term tab, midterm tab, long-term tab, with all the recommendations that you see on the sheets here. They will then look to prioritize those different opportunities, and then what we look to do is bring back those opportunities like we did back in 2015 with the elementary ones by strategic plan area for all of you to review, just like we did at that point. So what we'll have is just the use of Google will make it a little bit easier because we'll actually have the items, short-term, midterm, long-term, prioritized by ranking, but then we'll also have them already sorted by curriculum or strategic plan area. Then at that meeting on December 15th, I keep going back to 2015, December 14th was in 2015. But when we have our instructional committee meeting or operations, whichever we choose, at that meeting in December, we'll share that with all of you, like we did back in 2015, and you'll determine what we should move forward, what we should move forward. I do have to say that some of the topics, as you can see in this packet of information, it's overwhelming, exactly. So that's why the principal is getting the different levels of administration, because again, this is over 100 people provided this feedback. So now we need to look at it, and we do really need to prioritize. We need to decide what is manageable at this point. We're not trying to say we're getting rid of any of these ideas, it's just that we have to prioritize, because there is a lot in here. And I have to say, even trying to look at the data that Dominic and how he organized it, which was incredibly well, but even looking at it, and I was trying to pull out for all of you tonight, I was going to say, oh, well, let me put the top 5 strengths, the top 5 weaknesses, opportunities. It was impossible. I went through, no lie. Believe me, I didn't have to worry about watching the Giants on Sunday, but I sat there the last 2 Sundays, which we all know were not good for the Giants, actually the last 5. But the fact is, I sat there and I just kept coming at this from different angles, and I said, you know what? I need to put this in the hands of our building leaders. Look at the data, share that with all of you based on their priorities, just like we had done last time. But we didn't have as much data. And even though we had about the similar amount of people in the room when we did this for kindergarten through fifth grade over at the Ag Science Center, which I know many of you were there, the thing is that it just wasn't as voluminous as this is, which is good. I mean, this is great. This is good stuff. It's just there's a lot of stuff. So, and some of it could be clustered, and I think that's what you'll start seeing. But I think it'll help us inform our next steps and have some discussions.
Did you say about 100 people?
Yeah, we had over 100 people.
And would you say these, I'm just happen to pick up the weakness form. Is that like one person's thought, or several people might have thought this, or?
These were, it depends. Some of it could have been, we didn't do,
I'm trying to figure how you collected this.
well, we collected it, we didn't do it based on the fact that it had, we didn't value add in terms of the data. So we didn't say one was valued higher than the other. We
Right.
collected the raw data. So what we had again, and it was an interesting opportunity, and some people were in the room were in it, that we had everybody list their own beliefs in terms of strengths on the table, because they could write on these, some wrote on the table, some wrote on the walls. So what were the strengths? What were the weaknesses? What were the opportunities? Then they worked in small groups, and they shared those ideas with each other.
Okay.
And then they decided, okay, well, these are common between our groups. Then from there, we then put them up on this board, because remember, this is all interactive. So we threw them up here, and we started coding them by commonalities.
So there was commonality.
So there was the commonality, and then once we had our commonalities, we then put up short-term, mid-term, long-term, and dropped them into those charts based on the feedback of the group. Carrie and I just tried to move them around, but everybody said, oh, this one has to be short-term, this one, no, make that one long-term, and then we debated. We kept moving, or duplicated. We got too good into duplicated. They wanted it on all three. So we had, all three charts that had the same idea. So again, there's a lot of data here. I'm open to suggestions if there's a better way of moving forward. But we did have success when we did it this way last time. We won't lose anything because the data doesn't get lost. It's all here, so we'll make sure. We did talk about today that there might be things that are just not the right time right now. So we might have to, put those in a placeholder. But the good news is it'll get reflected back in the strategic plan. So that's the key thing. It all goes there so that, a month, 2 months, 2 years, 3 years from now, it's not gone. It doesn't fall off the table. So I just wanted to bring you up to speed on that.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Does anybody else have any questions?
Nope.
For the ones that don't have a cost to them, is that something that the board can look at, like additional locker breaks, or having middle school students come to a board of ed meeting and give an update like high school students do? There are some that are.
Well, those are and that's where I'm assuming those priorities will
Okay.
go up quicker, because those are the ones, and that was the stuff like I was starting to put together in my document that I have many drafts. Those are kind of the low-hanging fruit ones.
Yeah.
Those don't have, and a lot of them, because there's really 3 buckets that I ended up in my mind, was the costly ones, the philosophical ones that could also be costly, and then you had the ones like, oh my gosh, let's check that one off. Let's cross it off because we can do it. Let's do it now. So I think the let's do it now, I think the principals already know what some of those are, because remember that every principal at our middle school and high school level participated. Not all on the same day, which was good. They kind of sprinkled themselves around, which was nice. So they all had firsthand experience with this. I think there's going to be the cross off, but then there are the philosophical ones, and there are the money ones. And those, I think, are going to be the ones we're going to have to debate, and those are the ones we need to come back to you, because you need to help give us guidance as to where do they go. Do they go on the cutting room floor, do they for now, or do they go into the plan right now, midterm or long-term?
And define midterm and long-term?
What we're looking at short-term would be something within the next 2 years. Midterm would be, say, 2 to 5, or 3 to 5, and then long-term 5 and beyond.
Okay.
And we'll make sure in the presentation, the follow-up presentation, we'll make sure we do that.
Thanks.
Because that's another column that they have to do a little drop down.
Right.
I'm learning Google Sheets, Kathy, so I could help you too.
See, I would have thought short-term would have been less than a year, so that's good that you clarified that for me.
Yeah, because
And some of it's just.
some could be shorter than
Right,
less
I
than a year.
appreciate that.
But I think that some require us to do a little planning for, but they're not.
And I'm not trying to stress
Yeah.
the organization out by, putting that parameter, but that's important to know the difference between short, middle, and long.
And your comment that you just said about stressing the organization,
Yeah.
that is very key, because this is not meant to cause anxiety, it's actually to be reflective and to help us move forward.
Right, and then also under today's economic future as a state and as a community could drive some of this too, where everybody might say, we have to do this, but it's just not feasible in the timing perspective.
No, and I can't thank all the participants, and as I did, as I promised, because I know you were at a session.
Yep.
Everyone who participated got this data, as I promised, so it wasn't where it was in a vacuum and only the board got it. You got it the same day they got it, which is about a month ago, or at least 2 to 3 weeks ago. And so I sent it out, asked for feedback. And again, I just wanted to keep the process transparent, and we even had a community member who asked for it, that we sent it out to that person also. So again, we'll be back in December. If you have questions, if you would like to, take the time and start prioritizing yourself, go for it. We'll be happy to take a look at that. I can set up in the Google Classroom for all of you. The Google is what we call it at central office, so just so you know that. It's a noun in that way. So that's all I have to say.
Anybody else have any questions for Dr. Menzo at this time? No? All right. Presentation of the budget calendar.
Okay, so, I'm going with this, right? So we laid out the initial budget calendar, and you have copies of it. It's, I think, similar to last year, but we pulled up the timeline, tried to move it up about a month. And we're also gonna try to do some different worksheets as we meet with the departments and all that. So, excuse me, we'll be providing some different documentation as we have the initial, the guideline meetings at the end of this week. And then, looking forward, really, we're gonna have I'll call it the kickoff, where we're gonna hand out these documents, or not hand out documents, put them in the Google, apparently. And, we'll have those out. Actually, we've been putting them out in the Google over the last week. And so, we're going to have the meetings on Friday, kind of lay out some of the new documents that we're using, and then circle back towards the beginning of November to really go over the preliminary reviews of those budget documents. And then, once that's done, we'll start the hashing out process of going through and putting documents together, having that document ready to bring to the Board of Ed right after the first of the year.
And what we'll do is we'll work to make sure, because I think the process we're going to try to implement on Friday is very unique for at least our district. I don't know if it's necessarily unique in other places, but what we'll do is we'll share that process with you in one of your weekly updates, the document that we have, and some sample templates, just to share with you a little bit what we're doing and the mindset and the framework that we're trying to have our administrators utilize in developing this year's budget.
Okay, so, this is my first time through this process, so it's a little bit of a learning as we go here. But anyway, yeah, I'm sure it'll be fine. But as we're going to go through the presentation, and we're going to have some different, I'll call them guests, present at these different meetings to the Board of Ed. And then ultimately we have we're going to adopt that budget and bring it to the town and have the potluck potluck dinner, not supper, which is, I think, unique to Wallingford, and I'm actually looking forward to that.
It's not gonna be catered?
No, it's not. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm
But-
sure you can.
But you're more than welcome to come and be a guest chef with your own food that you bring for us to eat.
So that's, I guess, the high-level overview of the process. Are there comments, concerns, questions?
No. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Public comment? We're adjourned.